What's up, Bears fans? Welcome back to another edition of the Willis Twin Towers podcast. As you can see, we have a special guest tonight. This is his first time on the Willis Twin Towers. Please welcome in our guest, Mr. John Santucci, otherwise known as the Tooch. How's it going, John?
All right, man. It's great. It's great to be here. Jeff, you and I were just here last Friday. We spent quite a long time talking to everything Bears.
A couple hours.
Really good time. Tim missed it. Missed a good time.
To be honest, I fell asleep. The couch was like, well, I'm going to get on. And then next thing I know, I was out cold. So that couch calls my name on Friday nights. It just does.
I hear you. Yeah, when you get to be my age, too, it's like the after work nap that's calling, too.
Yeah, I can't do naps because I don't wake up. If I fall asleep, I'm done.
It was funny because we talked to – Go ahead, Tooch. I
was going to tell Tim, this is my 50th year as a Bears fan. Started watching the Bears in 1974 when I was 6 years old, and my dad and uncles were, screaming at the television set to break someone's legs. Yep. So when I was 6, I was like, what's going on? Who's getting their legs broke? But they were watching football, Bears football and stuff, Walter Payton and such. Mm-hmm. I've been hooked ever since. Now, started writing articles for when Aldo had a website. I was writing articles for Barroom back in 2017, and then started producing shows, and then did a lot of audio mashups and stuff because we were audio. We didn't have video. Then a few years later, we went to video, so we started, producing video shows. And I had a fantasy football show with Joe Mandel, who does the Somebody Big Just Died, and we still do fantasy football on Sunday. And then produced, the Bear. What was it called? 100 Proof. Sorry, it was called 100 Proof back then, and Aldo and Shane and Phil. Back in the day, and then those guys left and became Bare Their Souls with Dan Aguirre, and then I joined that crew, and then still doing Bare Their Souls.
I love watching Bare Their Souls because it kind of gives, like, we're all like, we try to be, I don't politically correct's not the right word, but for the most part we keep things pretty mellow, and that show just there's no holds barred, and I just love it. I love being just a listener on it and just go. And now typically, like, when that show airs, I'm in bed already because I get up at 3:00 in the morning for work every day. Right. So I'll watch it the next morning. When I'm at work, I don't really watch. I listen and do a little bit of the watching as I can. But
yeah,
John, I got to tell you, Tooch, your State of the Fair. Oh my God, their State of Affairs is like, I can see why you're a writer because it's excellent. You do such good work with that. I'm telling you, a lot of the listeners and watchers on that show come for the Bears State of Affairs. I'm telling you, they do, because it's excellent work.
Very humbled. I'm very humbled. Yep. Love. I don't know how I come up with it every week. It's really tough, But
and I wonder too, because sometimes there's just not a lot to talk about, and it's just same old thing over and over again. But you do a really great job of keeping it fresh, finding new things to talk about in there. You really do a great job, and I appreciate your work on that. I know that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm always trying to find the humor in all these situations that the Bears find themselves in. Like recently when Tim was on there, it was Will Campbell's arm length. It's like how people make such a big deal over a kid's arm length. But that's the state of it and stuff. And I'm sure we'll talk some Will Campbell and the Bears' first round draft pick. What are they going to do, and how short this draft is of blue chip players? In my opinion, there's not that many. I think if the Bears got a blue chip player in the first round, whether they are at 10 or, as the talk has been lately, trading up for one of these guys, whether it's Abdul Carter or Ashton Genty, there's talk of trading up, just to get one of these blue chip players. Because if I were to ask you guys which players were blue chip players on the roster right now, you might only say Caleb Williams,
Yeah, if you had to think about it and you went back and say we were to redraft these guys, what round would most of the Bears roster be picked in? I would say you're probably only going to have a handful of first round guys on there.
Yep.
That's, and that's to assume that you knew what they were going to be when they were drafted. So that's a tough one. You could maybe make an argument for Jalen Johnson. At this point, you would say DJ is one of our best players, but I don't know that he would be considered blue chip when you draft him. It's just there's not a lot of that. Darnell Wright may actually slide down in the board a little bit, even though I really like Darnell Wright and I think he's been excellent. who knows what it would be. I don't know that you could. I think you're right. I don't know if you could make a lot of argument for blue chip guys on the roster right now.
Yeah, I would say just Caleb Williams to me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one play where Bears are playing the Bengals, and Caleb Williams scrambled around, and he's running to his right, almost out of bounds. He fires his rocket, and unfortunately, Rome Odunze wasn't standing in bounds when he caught the pass. But man, you really get a glimpse of what Caleb could do, and I think I have a bunch of stuff for you guys today that I pulled, but
I would say I think Rome would be considered blue chip, and you made a good point there with that play, and he wasn't in bounds, but you could see tangible improvement as the season went on.
Oh yeah,
and where he was making those plays at the end of the season, and he was excellent in those situations.
I'm so glad we have this kid. I'll tell you,
Me too.
If not this year, very shortly he'll be the best quarterback in our division, and it's. I can't remember a time when the Bears had the best quarterback in our division.
Yeah.
But
might even have the best wide receiver here in a few years, because you never know. I mean, that's a tall task asking because of Justin Jefferson, but I think Rome's an awfully good player, and he's only going to continue to get better.
Yep.
Just, stats don't tell the whole story.
Right. This is ChatGPT predicting the 2026, not this coming year, but the following year, of the MVP race. In 2026, you see our guy.
That's beautiful.
Caleb's at the top in the top running for the MVP race, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with Ben Johnson. And I can't tell you. I know Jeff and I talked about this with Aldo, but I can't remember a time, and none of us probably could, when we were excited for a Bears coaching staff and head coach. I mean, Jeff and I were trying to come. For me, it was Mike Ditka. But after that, the good coaches were few and far between. It really, Jeff had said only Lovie Smith really was a good coach out of all of them since Ditka. And now here we are. How are you two feeling about Ben Johnson?
I mean, I'm like, when we first started talking about this process of the Bears hiring a new coach, we had a show and Tim and I gave like our candidate list of like guys we liked, and I had 3 guys at the top of my list, and Ben Johnson was 1A, like right at the top. And then it was like Vrabel and Pete Carroll were 1B and 1C, I think. But to me, Ben Johnson, it's like he doesn't have what they have, which is experience, but he's got everything else you're looking for in a head coach.
Great point.
He's got and really, if you didn't have conviction then, ever since he stepped foot in the door, from the time he walked in the building and he's waving at everybody in the balcony, there's no way you can't have conviction on this guy now, from the things he's said, from the things he's done, from the things he's talked about, his presence. He looks like he hasn't slept in effing days. It's like the guy is clearly a workaholic. So it's just, one of those things where you can see he's ingrained in this. Like, this is something he's entrenched in. He wanted the job. He's been passionate about the job. I mean, I think it's a great fit for the city. I think it's a great fit for the franchise. I think it's an excellent fit for Caleb. And I think it's something that the Bears have been looking for a long time, which is a true offensive innovator who has done it before. I mean, look at this guy. He looks like he has not slept at all, And he even said that at the owners' meetings in one of those. It was either a meeting with somebody or at one of the press conferences he did. I'm not sleeping much lately. So,
right.
And you can see it. You clearly can. So, and I do want to mention a comment here real quick, because I agree it's a little off track, but there's a couple different players here that I agree on this with. Like J2K said, Jalen Johnson's a blue chip player on the team. He's top 10 corner. At least I totally agree with that. He's a blue chip player in the league. Joe Tooney is a guy I said earlier. I don't know if you guys heard me. He's a blue chip player in the league at his position. I think you could make the argument for Rome as an ascending blue chip type player. I think DJ Moore even has it. He can be a blue chip player. Yes. So
close.
I bet with Ben Johnson, he will be a blue chip player. He is going to be unlocked. I truly believe that.
Like I said, and the fact you're even mentioning that right now kind of just alludes to the point we've been talking about here. Ben Johnson, there's so much hope and optimism here because of not just what he's done, like I said, the way he's talked and things like that, but the track record. He's a guy who's called plays in his past. It's not like Matt Nagy, who sat behind Andy Reid and who's really calling plays here in a situation like that. This is a guy who's done it at an elite level. And everybody around the league who knows anything about ball will tell you this dude knows what he's doing out there. He is very creative. I was watching a clip on Twitter yesterday, and I can't remember who posted it, but it was that play last year where it was a toss to David Montgomery, and then he ran that shovel pass play to, I think it was Amon-Ra St. Brown coming up from the outside, and he ran right up the middle there, and it was a huge, big chunk play, like 20, 25 yards or something. So just seeing things like that creativity, it really gets me going. Like, this is something we've never seen the Bears do, except for what, like the Santa sled thing that Nagy did. I mean, that was a cool little play in and of itself, but it's like, that's the most creative shit we've seen in Chicago on offense,
Yep.
I would like to see more of that kind of like that shovel toss play that they had in Detroit last year. So Vizzo Joe, I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly. I'm sorry about that, Joe, but NFL Live called Ben Johnson a madman. And I could totally see why they would say that, because some of the shit he does, it's like, you have some balls running that kind of play. You know what I mean?
The stumble bum.
He
even mentioned that he wanted him to actually put the ball on the ground. He actually tried to get Jared Goff to put the ball on the ground, and the only reason he did is because he wouldn't do it.
I bet Caleb would have done it. Caleb's not afraid to get in there and do it. But like I said, I just think it's something we haven't seen, something I'm looking forward to seeing what exactly he's going to do, because I don't think this is a cookie cutter assembly thing like he had in Detroit. He's mentioned this before. Like, I'm not going to run the same offense here. So I want to see exactly how he schemes up the personnel here in Chicago, what they're going to do with this.
That actually makes me think of something too. So it's kind of like everybody remembers when Mike Martz was brought in. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, the greatest show on turf. That guy's going to come here and unlock this offense. It's going to be amazing. And what did we see? We ran into a guy who said, this is the only way we can do it here. And as a matter of fact, the best player that you have on offense right now, we're going to trade him away because I don't know what to do with him. So we're going to get rid of, Greg Olsen, who is possibly a borderline Hall of Fame tight end, and we're going to ship him away because I don't know what to do with him. Where Ben Johnson is looking at this like, okay, we're not taking what I did in Detroit. We're going to do our thing here. This is our roster. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get away from my power run scheme a little bit, and I'm going to bring in a guy who has only ever run outside zone well in our center, Drew Dahlman. I'm going to bring him here, and I'm going to go with what you guys do well here, and then we're going to take this offense to the next level, which to me, right there and then, because I was the first person to say on our show, not the first person, but I was adamant that I wasn't sure that they would bring in a guy like Dahlman because he only ran zone scheme well. I didn't know if he'd be able to run a power scheme like Ben Johnson has done in the past. Well, I was wrong. Clearly, they're going to continue to do what they do well now.
Well, to back up a little bit, Tim, Ben Johnson, he does like to run outside zone, and I can't remember who was it. I think it was Matt Bowen said that if he had to guess coming in day one what the install would be in the run game for Ben Johnson, it would probably be outside zone. So I always thought that Drew Dahlman was a fit because of that too. But still, I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, Tim. And before I swing it over to you, Tooch, I thought it was really there was a couple of things that happened at the owners' meetings with the press conferences and some of the interviews that I thought were interesting. And we do have some clips from that, guys. But there was a point that he made that I thought was really interesting, and it kind of alludes to two of the guys they brought in free agency at the receiver position, and how Ben Johnson mentioned it. It's kind of funny, and I think it might have been on CHGO, the interview he did with Adam Hogue, that he said this, that the slot guy, the slot receiver, has a tendency to find the ball for whatever reason in his offense. He said it's not a favorite thing of his to do. It's not like he's necessarily scheming it that way, but for whatever reason in this offense, the ball happens to find the slot receiver's hands a lot. So, they brought in Zacchaeus. They brought in returner Devin Duvernay. I don't know if he's going to get a ton of offensive play time, but I think that we you and I talked about this last week, Tooch. I think it's important to keep an eye on the first, day two. We might see a skill receiver get taken somewhere on, on day two that can be that slot guy, potentially.
Yeah, I agree. Ben Johnson, even when he was in Detroit, his run game did feature various concepts, from inside zone, power, counter, and wide zone even. I'm hoping we'll see maybe, all four, but I agree that we'll probably be seeing some form of for the majority of the run game plays a zone scheme with the offensive linemen that we have, a little more nimble than Detroit's line. Detroit's line was a little bigger and more adverse to a power run game. And in the draft, there are plenty of running backs, and there are some running backs who are just like perfect zone runners in this. So wherever they go, whether it's like San Francisco or Denver, who run that West Coast run game, those guys are going to find immediate success if they go there. And then Jeff and I said probably one of the biggest draft needs, if not the biggest, is running back in this draft.
It is the number one draft need. It is a starting running back, in my opinion, is the most important position that needs filled on this roster.
But, however, we said the same thing last week between you and I, Tooch, as well. Just because it's your biggest need doesn't mean that's got to be the guy you take first. If there's
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I think it's going to be addressed early.
Yep.
It will. I'm just saying it's important to note that just because you have that need doesn't mean if Genty's there, you got to take Genty at 10.
I am a proponent of not taking Genty, as you know. I would not take Genty. I don't care if he does fall to 10. I'm not taking him unless I'm trading down and he's still there. I'm not a fan of taking a guy that early.
I would trade up for him.
You
possibly.
I would trade up for Ashton Genty. I think he's that good. I haven't seen a running back prospect this good since Saquon Barkley. I haven't seen one. You're talking about 2,600 yards rushing, and 1,800 yards of those 2,600 yards were after contact. He had a 39% forced missed tackle rate. That's like unheard of. That's 2 out of every 5 rushes he's forcing a missed tackle. 159 forced missed tackles of his carries last year. I mean, that's insane. He's got the extra gear. I like a lot of these other runners too. Travion Henderson's got that extra gear. But let's not forget the 22 and 23. He was really, he missed a lot of time with injuries. He doesn't have the best vision. He's got that deep speed. Then you've got Amarian Hampton, who's kind of more of a power run game.
That's my guy. That is 100% my guy.
He's got plenty of speed. Doesn't have the best deep speed, but he's got plenty of juice. And he's built like a rock too. And then to me, Caleb Johnson is the perfect zone runner in this draft. One cut downhill. Not only that, but he's big. He's 6 foot 220. He can catch the ball. Maybe has to work a little bit on his pass routes and stuff. And Genty's got the fumbling issue. But that can be taught. He's got to focus on holding on to the ball a little bit better. Caleb Johnson does not fumble the ball.
Nope. Neither does Omarion Hampton.
Neither does Hampton.
Neither does Travion Henderson.
Quinshon Judkins had 3 fumbles his whole college career.
I'm going to give you guys 3 names, and I would be willing to put money on this. Tooch, I know you're a betting man. I'd be willing to put money on one of these 3 names getting drafted by the Bears, and that's Omarion Hampton, Quinshon Judkins, or Caleb Johnson. Those 3 guys fit what the Bears want to do more than anybody else, in my opinion. At a high level. There are other guys in the draft, but not at that level that those 3 guys could provide.
I think Genty can do it all for Ben Johnson, and the explosive plays, which is what. Why don't we run the clip? The EPA. You guys want to see that one?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
He's looking for explosive plays. Yep. EPA.
Yeah. Sorry
expected points added.
Yeah. If you guys aren't familiar with what he's talking about, there's a clip from the owners' meetings where Ben Johnson was talking about the importance of EPA over turnovers. So let's show that clip.
Yep. Here we go.
What are the most important metrics to you to identify quarterback success?
So the way I understand it right now from our analytics team, the EPA in the passing game is really one of the most critical factors in determining wins and losses right now. That's probably changed over the last 5 years or so. I would have said 5 years ago, turnovers, takeaways, that was number 1. From what I understand now, that EPA for the passing game has now surpassed that. So whatever team has the higher passing game EPA at the end of the game, they generally win that game. It's over 80% of the time. So it's a huge stat, and that's where we look to how do we help inflate that number, higher completion percentage, more run after catch opportunities. That's not to say we're not going to take our shots down the field and look for big explosive plays, chunks or touchdowns that way, but there's a lot of ways we can get that done.
Yep. So quality offensive efficiency, quality play. I don't college they call it Eccles, named after the running back. I forget the kid's first name, but the Eckel. It's a quality offensive play. Like a third down, a 10-yard run on 3rd and 10, or a 15-yard pass play on 3rd and 10, where a 2-yard run on 4th and 1 is worth more than a 2-yard run on 2nd and 10. It takes into account all that stuff, and there's no doubt that Ben Johnson, his goal in Detroit was to score more points than the other team, and play good defense behind that as well. And Bears, we've always been a defensive team and run the ball. We're going to run the ball with Ben Johnson, no question. But for one thing, we hired Ben Johnson to unlock Caleb Williams, and Ben Johnson wants to improve, the efficiency of Caleb Williams. Jared Goff was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL last year.
It's really J2K makes an interesting point here too. He did say what's interesting is he's saying EPA in the passing game, and he did say that specifically a couple of different times. But at the same time, your run game is an extension of your passing game. If you don't have a solid run game in Ben Johnson's offense, which we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but we do know he likes to run the ball a lot, which is going to help out the quarterback play in the passing efficiency. And we've said it for years that the Bears need to get back to playing more play action because that opens up the passing game. And that's something that Ben Johnson loves to do. So,
and I got to admit, as a fan, I love watching play action.
Me too.
Ever since I was a kid, man, like Boomer Esiason used to be like one of the best play fake guys I ever saw, hiding that ball. Another guy was Jeff Garcia of the 49ers used to be really good. All the 49er quarterbacks, Montana and Steve Young, Peyton Manning. Yep, all the play. If we could unlock that, which is what the Lions ran play action 37% of the time, which was top 3, and the Bears ran 17% of the time, which was the bottom half of the league. So expect to see more play action this season, and I'm excited, definitely excited.
Well, and as often as like the offenses have changed over the years, that's one thing that has always been here, and the skill continues to have success is play action. It's never gone away.
You know what's another thing that the biggest takeaway that I had from what they were talking about, and Maddie mentions Warren Moon as another play fake guy. I thought Peyton Manning was the best that I've ever seen do it in my lifetime, but I'm a little younger than you two at the same time.
Montana and Boomer Esiason, I think, were the two best I ever saw.
Montana, I've seen enough film of him to know that it was damn good. But in my lifetime of watching football was Peyton Manning.
Chris Sims' dad, Phil Sims, was really good.
Yeah. So, anyways, going back to what I was talking about, the interesting thing that I found about that particular clip we just showed was the first takeaway that I had from it, which is he's talking about the importance of EPA versus turnovers, and everything. The only thing I could think about was Matt Eberflus continuously talking about the importance of not turning the football over. And the only thing I can think about is at practice every day what he was probably doing, drilling into these quarterbacks' minds. Make sure you're not turning the ball over. Make sure with every throw you're about to make or not make that it's a safe throw. You're not about to turn that football over because that's the most precious thing. Whereas I think Ben Johnson's going to come in, he's going to stare Caleb Williams in the face and say, let it fucking rip. And that's what I want to hear and what I want to see. So,
you could tell that Caleb Williams' game, you could tell he was timid at times because he wanted to take a shot, but he just knew that coaching was going to be in his ear. Like, hey, don't take this. Don't take that throw. Don't make that throw here. Don't take a chance here. Like, why would you take away what that guy was so good at? You're crippling your quarterback in essence doing that. Like, especially with a rookie, you got to let it rip. You got to let him get comfortable there. Like, I'm not a football coach in the NFL, but I'm not an idiot. And I don't understand how you could sit there and coach that out of him. And that's why as much as I said, I don't care if it's an offensive coach or a defensive coach, as long as they have a good staff, it would have been very beneficial for Caleb to have an offensive coach last year who isn't going to try to coach out of him what he's good at. And that's exactly what Matt Eberflus did.
Yeah. Turnovers are still important, of course, but you can win the turnover battle and still lose the ball game. And the point that Ben was making was that EPA, the team that wins the EPA percentage battle, it wins 80% of the time. That was his quote. Yeah. If you win an EPA per play, the team wins the game 80%. And he led his team to a 15-2 record. That's 88.2% win percentage and they were one of the top teams in the NFL in EPA per play percentage.
I would
And
take
their
a 500
defense was
percentage right
falling
now.
Yep.
Their defense, I don't know if you guys heard me, but their defense was kind of falling apart late in the year too. So the fact they continue to win games like that shows you just how true that is.
And what were we doing last year? Last couple of years with Eberflus, we were losing games in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Double-digit leads.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We just weren't efficient on offense.
And the defense was falling apart on our side too in those those situations. So it's like you can't have both of those things happen and expect to win football games. But J2K makes a good point here too. That statistically, you don't need a good run game to have a successful play action game. And a lot of people have been talking about that lately. But a run game can close out a game and extend a drive on short yardage downs, and of course it can. But also an explosive run game also opens up the ability for you to have that explosive passing game as well, because now you got to account for the threat in the run game. So now maybe you're bringing up an extra guy in the box. Now there's less in protection or less in coverage there for you to account for. So it's going to open things up for you offensively in general. But I totally agree with you, J2K. You can run play action without necessarily having the run game working well for you, because it's still a threat. So, I totally agree with you guys. And like I said before, I think it's a big deal to consider the fact that, I think they're just going to coach Caleb differently as far as his mindset and what to do and how to go about, improvement and actually getting better and learning from his mistakes. So, I really like that. There's a couple other comments in here that I want to address before we get into some other stuff here.
Yeah.
I want to, before you get going, there's one right here I want to talk. Scrolls makes a really great point. Caleb was making fourth quarter comebacks without protection or running game, just a stud, chase greatness. I want to mention that because that was the moment that I knew that they made the right decision in trading Justin and drafting Caleb. Was in the fourth quarter. Seeing him elevate his game in the fourth quarter and not being afraid in the fourth quarter, which is something that we didn't see from Justin.
His game fell apart in the fourth quarter.
It did.
And I love Justin Fields.
Me too.
I'm so glad that we have Caleb Williams.
Me too.
I don't know if you guys remember this, but I said this on the podcast last year. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Minnesota game late in the year. And it was Fields last year with the Bears. So it was 2 seasons ago. And I believe it was the second game they played against Minnesota. So I think it was at home. They ended up winning the game. The Bears did. But they had the game in the bag. They got the ball back late in the game. And I can't remember for sure if they had the lead or if they had the chance to take the lead and win the game. But Fields fumbled the ball. And and the Minnesota took over and had a chance to put the game away.
Yep.
The Bears got lucky to get the ball back and won.
I remember.
You guys remember that game? So I remember thinking to myself, as soon as he fumbled that football, I remember falling to my knees and thinking to myself, Fields is done. They're going to move on. And sure as shit, it's ended up what they did. But I don't know if it was that moment that secured that for him. But I agree with you guys. That's kind of what I was talking about is late in these games, it's almost like his mindset was like, I just can't fuck up now. I just got to make sure we can't lose. And you got to have that killer mindset where I'm going to go out and win this thing. I'm going to take this thing. And I think Caleb absolutely has that as being referenced in here. So Case Keenum picture, I do want to get into that in just a second here. And Maddie says that he'll help Caleb. And there were some comments at the owners' meetings from Ryan Poles. He mentioned some stuff, I believe it was on Hogan Johns, about potentially looking at a veteran quarterback. So I want to talk about some of those comments. But real quick, there's some other comments in here in the chat. I just want to address these real fast before we move on. Because I don't want to forget him and lose time here. J2K mentioned that wide receiver Jalen Lane was a top 30 visit. He's a pure slot receiver. We were talking about slot receivers earlier.
I like him a lot.
I have not seen that report yet. If you could provide who actually reported that, and is it on like Walter Football and one of the other sites yet? Because the only receiver that I know of that I've seen has actually had a reported top 30 visit is Isaiah Bond from Texas. So if you can let us know on that, who reported that, I'd really appreciate it, J2K. And I want to do some more work on him as well. But
he's got some serious speed.
Virginia Tech, correct?
He's very fast. I do know that about him. He's very, very, very fast. Like I told you, I've been telling you guys for weeks now.
They're little guys.
There's looking for speed, dude.
He's like 5'8" or 5'9".
All the guys with good speed are little guys, except for what's the Ole Miss receiver, Trey Harris.
I think that's his name. Yeah.
That dude he ran a 4.5 something at the combine. but he is not a forfeit. That dude, he could take a slant to the house. He doesn't run that big of a route tree, but this was the guy that Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss looked to for the big play. They run him a hitch, and then double move and gone. A crossing route or slant play or post, and he take it to the house. To me, that's the home run wide receiver in this draft is Trey Harris at the top guy. Luther Burden, you could say, Luther Burden is another good one like that. And he's 6 foot and he's got some muscle and he'll break some tackles too. I don't know if he's got the long speed like the Ole Miss kid has though, but I love this the Ole Miss wide receiver. He's a little raw, but I think there's some serious potential, man, with this kid.
Yeah.
He's 6'2", 210, and he's got serious long speed. I don't know if you guys.
Where is he projected to go?
Second round, I think.
Really? Okay.
Second round. Yeah.
I have to look into that. So there was another real quick. Another couple of comments I want to real fast before we move on. We were talking about Ashton Jeanty a little bit, and this has been a big talking point for us, obviously. So most of you guys know that Tim and I are not huge proponents of taking a running back in the first round. At least I'm not. I don't know if I love the idea of Jeanty, even if it's at 10.
Well, if it's okay, so
and I'll give you my reasons why before you go ahead with your question, though.
When was the last time you saw a quarterback prospect like Caleb Williams? I know quarterback's a completely different position than running back.
Like Caleb?
And he was called generational and stuff, and I hate that term, but
yeah,
if you're thinking generally, it's an okay term to use. A player's not generational until they played in the league for 3 to 5 years and have proven something. But to me, I have not seen a player like Ashton Jeanty in a long time, like a guy this good at the running back position, where I think that he can change the outlook of every game that he's in. The long speed. The dude is freaking hard to tackle, man. He's 5'8", 210 pounds, and he's all muscle. This guy, to me, he's going to change some team's game. He's going to be an awful hard player to stop in this league, I think. The other guys are good and we'll be happy, but they're not going to be like possible Hall of Fame material. And I think this kid has a chance. He had more yards in college than Derrick Henry, LaDainian Tomlinson. I mean, those are both Hall of Fame running backs. He had more yards than either of those guys. You would say, well, he didn't face a lot of good competition. And I made the point in Bear State Affairs that neither did Walter Payton. Like, would you take Walter Payton in the first round? I don't think there's any of us here that wouldn't. Would you take Saquon Barkley in the first round? I think all of us would. And Saquon Barkley, he led the Eagles to a Super Bowl berth last year. I know Eagles had their defense came around second half with Vic Fangio, and Jalen Hurts. He played his ass off throughout the playoffs. But I mean, for the most part, Saquon Barkley carried the team on his back for the most of that season. At least in the beginning, he was running for 200 yards a game a couple times. 3 touchdowns a game. Man, I was betting a Saquon touchdown prop every week. But I think that the kid could really change the complexion of the game. I think Marion Hampton will be a really good player too. He's got a chance to be affect a game like that too. And I think Judkins and Henderson and Caleb Johnson will all be solid NFL starters. After that, it gets a little murky. But there are some good players. So there's some good,
Tim, before
speed and stuff.
Yeah, Tim. Before you go on, Tim, I want to mention this real quick because I don't want to give off the impression that like I'm not a Jeanty fan. I'm a big Ashton Jeanty fan. For anybody who doesn't think that I am for whatever reason by what I've said in the past or what I'm saying tonight, I'm a big fan of his play. I will say, I agree with you. He's not as good as Saquon was coming out. I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime covering the draft or watching the draft closely enough a running back as good as Saquon was coming out.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah,
and I can't believe the Giants let him walk, to be honest.
I know, just stupid.
And if he'd have been healthy for a couple of those seasons that he was hurt, he'd be even more insane.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the bodies of both running backs. They're pretty similar. I know Jeanty's a little smaller, but he's got those gigantic thighs.
Yeah.
And I think he's faster than Saquon. Saquon's got plenty of long speed.
I don't know if he's faster than Saquon, but he is pretty damn fast. I mean, he's on tape, he's damn fast. The one thing I'll say, there's a couple things I want to say about Jeanty. So, number one, I want to agree with King Booker World, who made a point here that at this point, based on what they've done so far, I'm pretty open to whatever they do. I wouldn't be necessarily upset by any move they made.
Yep.
I might not love one as much as I might love another. You know what I mean? Like I would love a trade down where you get like an edge rusher or something, and then you pick up an extra second round pick.
An extra.
That would be fantastic.
Or trade down for an O'Marion Hampton that you can get later in the first.
Or Mike
Williams. Though he might not be there if we trade down. You know?
True.
Right.
So that's the danger. But look, the Bears, they made phenomenal moves in the offseason via trade and free agency to improve the offensive line. But if you were to ask me, why the hell did the Bears focus on their offensive line? It's not because we had it's not just because we had a shitty offensive line. We did. Caleb Williams was sacked 68 times last season.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line was not good, and the play calling was worse. But they looked at the draft. They said, this is a terrible draft for offensive linemen. We need to fill.
Definitely for tackle.
We need to fill the spaces. We need to fill the space on our offensive line in free agency and through trades. And they did. They traded a 6th-round pick for Joe Tooney. They traded a 4th-round pick for Jonah Jackson. So if you're asking me, we have to take a left tackle in the 1st round, I'm not so sure. They brought in Josh Connerly for a visit. He's more of a 2nd-round pick. He could sneak into the 1st round. I don't know. And then,
I will say on Connor, sorry to interrupt you, Teach, but I will mention on Josh Connerly, I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch this, but Nate Tice does a show on Yahoo Sports, and he had his dad on, Mike Tice, who's a longtime NFL coach. He's an offensive line coach here in Chicago, as you guys know. He actually
NFL tight end too,
right?
Tice. Yep.
Wasn't he coordinator here in Chicago?
Yeah, he was a tight end.
He got promoted to OC, yeah.
Yep, tight end coach, and then he was promoted to OC. Yep.
Correct. So Mike Tice knows O-line play. And matter of fact, it's funny because when I was watching this podcast he was doing with Nate Tice, he said Josh Connerly was his number 1 O-lineman in this entire draft. He's got him at like 5. He's really, really, really high.
And the Bears must like him too. They brought him here for a visit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
but to me, I would give him a 2nd-round grade. I think he could sneak into the 1st round. Mike Tice was a hell of an he coached offensive line here too. He coached tight ends for a long time. He was an NFL tight end, and then he became offensive coordinator here when Mike Martz left. Of course, Jay Cutler was famous for hating both of those offensive coordinators, much like we hate Shane Waldron and Matt Nagy. But, the Bears took a look at the offensive linemen in this draft. They said, there really isn't next year's a better draft for left tackle.
Especially at tackle, yeah.
Jaden Proctor on Alabama is going to be pretty good, and then the Francis Maugo on Miami. Both those guys will be and I don't think I hope the Bears aren't picking that high to take either of those guys next year. But if we are, we've had a bad season.
Yeah. So real quick,
before you do, I want to piggyback on that Genty talk for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So
let me finish my point on him, Tim, and then I'll move on to you because I wanted to say one more thing about him. In regards to Genty, there's obviously, like I said, I would be open to this because of the fact that things they've done, and I wouldn't hate the fact. I just wouldn't love for a variety of reasons. Number one, as I said earlier, I don't love the idea of taking a running back in the 1st round. Also, as far as Genty himself is concerned, this particular class, like if it was last year's class at running back, which it was really, really honestly terrible.
Yeah.
I would love the idea of taking Genty right now because you're not going to get one later on. Right. This particular class, you can get a running back later on in this draft and feel good about it. And we've mentioned before, many of the running backs we like. I mean, Travion Henderson's a guy I like a lot. Rashard Smith's a guy who's coming on a top 30 visit. He's like a 5th or 6th round guy, most likely. But I've seen people like him as a day 2 guy. So I'll be interested to see what happens.
The Bears taking Travion at 10 recently. It was
that's crazy. I could never see that happening. But in the 2nd round, yeah.
But let me just say, like, I would still, like, if the Bears are taking, they miss out on Genty. Yeah. We don't want to take Travion Henderson. His skill set's the same as DeAndre Swift. I mean, honestly, do you guys see DeAndre Swift retiring in a Bears uniform?
No.
I know.
And that's the point I made last week. It's like, just because he's here right now doesn't mean you have to draft a guy who's a compliment to him. You're drafting a guy who's going to be your potential future, possibly. I think Travion Henderson could be a guy who's a long-term solution, 3-down back kind of thing, based on what I see from him.
Maybe they take 2 running backs this year. Maybe they take a Marion Hampton and a Bashal Tootin, and then you've got your Thunder and Lightning, very similar.
Maybe they take
Do you guys know Brian Gilmore?
Go ahead.
You guys know Brian Gilmore?
Yeah.
He's the most studious of our chat room.
He's always loving on the bench.
He does.
He noticed.
He did.
I wore this for the Willis Twins, and then we made Tim go and get a concert shirt.
I did. I went and changed my shirt.
Yep. We're waiting for someone to notice, Brian.
We appreciate you noticing. You know, we all, like we mentioned before, we love our bands and we talk about it every once in a while. So,
but before we talk about Case Keenum, I mean, and I hate to like compare, and I don't want to put a ton of pressure on Ashton Genty and whatnot. But if Saquon Barkley were in this draft and we're talking about him the same way we're talking about Ashton Genty, you might spend a first round pick, not waste, but spend a first round pick on a running back. Then I don't want to be afraid of, and normally I would agree with you that like you can get a running back anywhere. You can't get transcendent running backs anywhere. And that's what I think about this kid. I know there's he's got a lot of mileage on the tires. 397 carries last season. That's a lot. But I mean, the kid he's all muscle. His muscles have muscles. So the wear and tear, I mean, I'm a little concerned, but not terribly, not as much as Greg Gabriel is. And then the fumbling, of course, there's that issue. You can ding him on that and stuff. That can be coached out. But to me, for someone who's going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times, is going to force missed tackles, is going to the first 50-yard home run that Ashton Genty's runs for the Bears, you guys will be like, I'm glad we took a running back number 10 overall or wherever we took it. Because I guarantee you that Ben Johnson he's in Ryan Pohl's ear saying, I need a guy like this to run my offense and get the explosive plays, whether it's run game. He'll take a screen pass to the house too. As long as we draw it up. Ben Johnson would love to draw up some plays for this guy. And there's other guys too. I mean, both Poles and Ben Johnson talked about Tyler Warren, and I would love to get your guys' opinion on him. I'm not as high as him as Ashton Genty. Like running backs, there's a ton of tight ends in this draft too. But this is the time for the Bears to get explosive players on offense, whether it's at running back, wide receiver, or tight end. That's my opinion. I think in order for Ben Johnson to have the success and to help Caleb Williams grow, we need a few more explosive players on offense.
I'll finish off that Genty conversation just because I agree with both of you that normally I would say no running back, not even the first round. I'm not against drafting running back in the first round. I'm not high on using a premium pick on a running back. So like a top 10, even maybe top 15.
The 4 categories. What are they? For
right.
First round players, cornerback,
tackle, edge, corner. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not real big on it. I'm just not. And I agree. A lot of it too this year is because that running back class is so deep. Yeah, although I will say, I think there's 5 guys that are head and shoulders above the rest of the class. Yep. So in my opinion, if you don't get one of those 5, I think the Bears have failed. I think they have to get one of those 5. And in my opinion, really 3 of them, well, you could make 4 with the Genty argument.
That's a great point, Tim. Great point.
Yeah, yep. I think one of them I don't think is necessarily an option, but 5 of them for sure are head and shoulders above the rest. And I think it goes Genty, Hampton, and then there's a pretty significant gap between the next 3 even.
Yep. I agree too. I think to me it's like Genty, then there's a gap, then there's Hampton, then there's a gap, then there's like Travion, Quinshawn, Caleb, something like that. And
I agree.
Genty may be gone at pick 3. He may be gone at pick 6. Yeah. He may be gone at pick 9. So I mean, all 3 of those teams that are picking there, I'm talking about the Giants, the Raiders, the Saints. Alvin Kamara's not getting any younger. The Giants are going with it. They have a nice young running back in Tyrone Tracy. He's a good ball player. He's fought injuries though too as well. They might love to have someone to just think. Yeah, I forget what is it. Who is quarterbacking the Giants? Is it Tommy DeVito this year? They're not going to get Cam Ward.
No.
You know, I could see him contemplating Shedeur Sanders there, but I'm not in love with Shedeur Sanders. I actually like Tyler Shuck better. I like Tyler Shuck better. I think the kid, I mean, he's 26 years old, but I think that's a kid that could actually come in and start at quarterback for some teams. It's a perfect Packers pick. You know, watch out if the Packers, you know, pick him in the second round, something like that, and they're just like not feeling it. I don't think Jordan Love is really that good. I think he's okay. But for the first time, like the Packers really haven't had a quarterback that's in the upper half of the league with Jordan Love now. You know, Aaron Rodgers is gone, Brett Favre is gone. You know, ever since you know, you guys probably have been watching the Bears. They've had a Hall of Fame quarterback on the Packers.
Yep.
You know, and this is now it's like where we've watched some Jordan Love and stuff, and he's okay. You know, he's not a terrible player. I think he's in, you know, around middle of the league, maybe upper middle of the league, but he's not. I don't think he's as good as Caleb Williams. I don't think he'll ever be as good as Caleb Williams.
I agree. I think we have a chance to take that rivalry over again because I think we certainly have the better quarterback, and I think Jordan Love showed who he really was last year. Especially towards the end of the season. I think there was that point in time 2 years ago where he kind of had that late season surge, and then he got paid the big money because of that, and everybody thought he was the next great thing, and then reality kind of snuck in last year, and we saw what he really is. But, you know, to make my final point here with this, I think you make an excellent point. Genty could be gone top 3, top 5. Yep. And if that's the case, when the Bears get to 10, it might be a real scenario where they could say, we got to take Omarion Hampton now because this guy's not going to fall much further. Yep. Because he's really high valued as well. And I think, by the way, he's Tooch. I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but I think he's the better of the two. I think he's going to have the better pro career. Whether or not he's the better prospect is another. I think he's going to have the better. I think he'll be fine.
To me, he doesn't have a lot of wiggle.
Yes.
You know, and I love, you know, he's one cut and go, and he's a load to break down and stuff, but he's not shifty. You know, he doesn't make people miss.
I think if you're a defense with a really good penetrating 3-tech, he's going to have problems against you.
Yep.
He's going to have real problems.
He may struggle against really good defensive lines, but which back isn't. But if you like Derrick Henry, man, Omarion Hampton is your guy.
Well, he reminds me. Frankly, he reminds me of. He's like a David Montgomery on steroids coming out of the draft.
Like Montgomery.
And if he can ascend his career like Montgomery has ascended his, we could be talking about a much better version of David Montgomery with the Bears.
Oh yeah.
So I mean,
he's better than Montgomery. Look, Montgomery ran a 4.6.
Yes.
You know, the guy who I would compare, the David Montgomery in this draft to me is Cameron Scatterbo, but I think he's better than Montgomery. I wouldn't mind seeing him on the Bears too. I think if you're looking for a guy that's going to be a load, he does have that lateral agility, and he's a load to bring down too. Scatterbo, he's a good receiver too.
He reminds me a lot of Roschon Johnson now.
He's better than Johnson.
You think so? I don't know. I don't watch enough Scatterbo to really know that.
See, I personally thought Roschon
running back draft.
It is a really good one.
Like this, there are two things that are coming to my mind here. So I want to make this point real quick, say one more thing, and then let's talk Case Keenum. So real quick. So
it's a hard discussion to get off of. It really is.
As much time as you guys need.
All right. So real quick. So I think that's an interesting point because when you think about now I'm losing my train of thought because of all this, damn it. Because I'm trying to bounce around too much.
Scatterbo?
Yeah, so Scatterbo. Yeah, so that brings me back to the last couple of drafts, right? So let's just think about the Roschon draft too. So let's compare the Roschon draft to this one. You want to talk about a draft that's so deep at the running back position. We're talking about a Scatterbo could go like late day 3. You know what I mean? He's not. He might not go 4th round. He might go 5th, 6th, something like that. Whereas Roschon Johnson, yeah, I think so too. Whereas Roschon Johnson, he's a guy who went in the 4th round, and like you said, I think Scatterbo's a far better running back prospect.
I'd rather have Scatterbo than Johnson. And I mean, look, Johnson was money on the goal line. You gave him the ball, he got it.
Yeah.
That's it though.
He just can't get you more than 2 yards. He's not doing that. I think his biggest run I've seen him make in a Bears uniform is 8 yards.
Yeah, and then he's got the concussion problem too, like Jaquan Brisker.
Yeah.
You know, and I think when it comes to our safety room. All of our safeties are out of contract at the end of this year. They're going to have to look at safety in the draft. And I'm not so sure that they want to extend Jaquan Brisker. I think they're happy to let him test the free agent market. And if nobody offers him anything, maybe resign him at a discount. But I don't think they were happy with his social media presence and comments while the team was, orchestrating their mutiny against the head coach.
I think that's what happened with him in the first place, why his concussion lingered so long.
Yep.
I think he got in the doghouse with Eberflus, and he said, nope, you're on the bench. And that's kind of unfortunate. And I don't know if it remained that way with Brown afterwards, if it was this, because of the, what was Andre Curtis was the safety coach, I think. Maybe he got in his doghouse. I don't know what the hell happened there, but it's just it was an unfortunate situation because he's a good football player, and I want to see how he does with Dennis Allen's defense.
And there's some pretty good safeties in this draft too.
There are
from the first round to about the fourth round. There's some really good ones, and then after that, you're throwing darts. I think the Alabama, Georgia safety is pretty good. Penn
South
State,
Carolina,
both South Carolina's got the unicorn safety. Yeah, Notre Dame has got Xavier Watts. The Georgia kids and the Alabama kids are all pretty good. Those.
I would honestly be surprised if the Bears didn't get one of those top 3 or 4 safeties. I would be really surprised if they didn't draft.
I think
one
it
of
all
them.
depends on how this board falls because they have a couple needs where I would not be surprised if they addressed a certain guy in a certain area. It just like I said, depends on how the board falls. So this is what brings me another point I want to make real quick. So we've been talking about at length, obviously, about the possibility of a trade down. We obviously talked about, if Genty's there at 10, you could take him. If Tyler Warren's there at 10, you could take him. A lot of people like Will Campbell. If he's there, maybe I don't think that would happen with the Bears. But
those are the 3 players for me.
Right.
I think the Bears will seriously consider if all 3 of those guys are gone, they're trading back. They'll try to trade.
And I was just about to say that. So that brings me to that point. So, I mean, if you're forced to sit there and make a pick because you can't find a buyer, somebody to come up and move up and take your pick, then I think, you might be talking about something that's a different conversation. But I think in any case, even if one of those guys is there or all of those guys are there, which I doubt any of them are going to be there. But if they are, I still think because of this particular draft, we just talked about it, the blue chip talent in this draft is so minimal.
Yep.
And there's people who would say Ashton Genty's blue chip. I think he's borderline blue chip. I think he's.
Oh man, I think he's one of the few.
I have a hard time.
He's one of the only definite ones for me.
The reason I say that I think he's borderline is because I like what I see on tape. It's not because I don't think he looks like a really good player. My issues with him are, number one, he played at Boise State where it's not elite level competition. And when he did play elite level competition, I don't want to say he struggled, but he did not look like he did against the other teams.
But let me can I counter that argument?
Of course. Yeah.
Because Penn State was the number 1 defense in the country.
Yes,
arguably with Notre Dame, Penn State,
yes.
Arguably. And he was running behind Boise State's offensive line.
That was the other part I would say too, is that O-line.
Players, some players who were Hall of Fame running backs didn't play at top competition. I gave Walter Payton as one example. He played at Jackson State. So you have to kind of project what he's going to look at. But I think there's plenty of numbers, measurables. I know he didn't run. He didn't do a lot of the drills, but you see the forced missed tackles, the yards after 5.9 yards after contact. That's insane. 39% forced missed tackle rate. The long runs, the explosive plays, those are all translatable to the NFL to me. And I know I'm not going to ding him because he played in the West Coast Conference, even though it was a lower, and that helped him a lot, but a lot of you can watch and you see, the ability, the vision, the elite contact balance. Elite.
That is his best quality.
That's the best thing. And then he's got an extra gear. Like when guys are getting close to him, he runs faster. I don't know how, but he does. He's got the long speed. And that's something I think will translate also. There aren't a lot of players that are long speed running backs. Look, who do you think of the long speed running backs in the NFL right now? I can name 2 off the top of my head. Squan Barkley.
Long speed guys. I think Derrick Henry is still one as big as
Derrick
he is.
Henry
because
is still one.
Guys downfield.
Yeah, Henry, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Saquon, absolutely. Even Alvin Kamara can still outrun guys like that.
Kamara's another one. Long speed.
I'm trying to think of some more guys. Kamara at one time was really doing it, not so much now.
Kid from Tampa last year, rookie last year.
Bucky Irving.
Yeah.
Bucky Irving, yeah.
Bucky Irving, yeah, he's pretty fast.
Yep.
Shoot, trying to think of some more guys. But yeah,
that kid's going to be really good next
Bucky
year.
Irving ran a 4.65 40 too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I
You
mean,
guys-
tape speed and running in your shorts is a lot different.
yeah.
Some guys just don't run 40s fast.
What is it? Brashard Smith, Jaden Blue, RJ Harvey. Those are kind of the Bucky Irving types.
Mm-hmm.
And RJ Harvey, I think, ran a 4.5 or 4.6. And he's got the same kind of build as Bucky Irving. You might see him, someone who wants that kind of player like Tampa has.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the other Tampa Bay running back's good too. I don't know if
He
you know
is.
his name.
Rashad White.
Rashad White. Yeah, James
Real
Cook. James Cook is another
Mhm.
really good running back. Can break off some runs.
Yes.
But I mean, a lot of teams, they just don't have it. You know, they just don't have that long speed running back, and that's something that can really change a game. Once a home run, like Justin Fields used to hit those home runs for the Bears, and that broke the other team. Man, I remember we played the Dolphins, and I don't remember the name of the coach, Mike
McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel.
Did he tell him to slow down or something?
Yeah, he was telling him, knock it off.
Yeah.
Stop it.
He's sticking his foot out trying to trip him and shit.
But yeah, seeing the back of someone's jersey take a handoff to the house, man, it's demoralizing.
Yeah.
You know, but I would love to see it on the Bears. I don't think he's going to be there.
I don't either.
A lot of people are thinking we want that home run. You know, we want other defenses to game plan for our running back, you know, every week, and then open up the play action, open up the game for the quarterback. And I would love, man, if we had a player like Ashton Jonty and they're focusing on the run game, run that play action, let Caleb Williams cook, you know. But Caleb Williams didn't throw the deep ball at a high percentage last year. That's something he's got to work on, you know. But to me, it looked a lot like a lot of times the running backs, the quarterback, the offensive coordinator, they weren't all on the same page. Maybe they weren't in the places they were supposed to be. And, of course, all the pressure that Caleb faced in his face last season, it didn't help when he was trying to throw the deep ball.
I mean, you also had an offensive coordinator / head coach that was calling plays in an offense that wasn't even his offense. So, I mean, that could definitely be a part of that, you know?
Right.
I mean,
Thomas Brown, right?
Yeah.
And Shane Waldron, he was a disaster. I'm glad we'll have Ben Johnson. And I don't – with you guys, I know Eberflus was calling the defense and filling the role of head coach as well. I never felt like he had a handle on managing the game when he was doing both roles.
I don't think he ever had a handle on the game when he was doing it, period. Even in the beginning when he wasn't calling defensive plays, I still don't think he had a clue what he was doing.
I typically don't agree with him, but I have to agree with him on this, and I wholeheartedly agree because, look, and it goes beyond just the late in the season mismanaging the clock and shit. Like, if you think about overall game management as a head coach, what is your responsibility? Your responsibility is to look at everything that's going on and analyze where your team is both having success and where it's failing. And where was the failure throughout the early part of his tenure? The defense played like dog shit too. That was another big failure. And Alan Williams, his defensive coordinator who didn't make it, obviously, he was having problems. He couldn't coach the defense well. It was bad play calling, too much soft coverage with press corners. It made no sense. So, and they weren't having success in that realm. And when he finally did take over, it was like instantaneous success for the defense. 100%. So it's like the guy can obviously call defensive plays. He knows what he's doing in that department. But I agree with Tim. He never had an understanding of what was going on around him. He's too micromanaged, too laser focused tunnel vision on something that's going on in each game that he can't see the big picture, you know?
Yep, totally agree.
And he clearly didn't have a very good he wasn't a good people reader. I don't know how else to say that. He just did not know how, like, he brought like his idea of what good interviews was apparently wasn't very good because everybody he brought in was bad. Like everybody, the whole they were so proud of the Shane Waldron process. How do you get that? How do you look at that guy's personality and say, that's who we want? He's got the perfect personality.
Other people too.
Yes, they had like 9 interviews.
What was it? What's the The guy who went to the Commanders as the offensive coordinator.
Cliff
Kingsbury. We interviewed Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah. I'm not mad about that one. I don't think Kingsbury's going to be very good for much longer. He does this in like these short spurts where he's a good OC.
That's the track record. Yep.
Yeah, he'll get figured out quick. It's only so often your quarterback has to look past his first read at some point. Or teams are going to figure that out.
Well, that's a good point too, because if you look back at last offseason, the Commanders added Jaden Daniels, but before that they built their offensive line.
Yes,
which is kind of what the Bears are doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a graphic for you guys. Let's see where it is here. Yeah, here's where we've upgraded this season. You have the biggest upgrade, of course, is going to Ben Johnson from Matt Eberflus. And then Tevin Jenkins.
Well, I don't know. You can almost make an argument for Nate Davis over Jonah Jackson because Nate Davis didn't even play, so he wasn't even there.
Right.
It doesn't matter who you plug in there. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting. Like Mercedes Lewis, I could say the same thing. You could put Gerald Everett there instead, because I think that's more the role Durham Smythe will play. He'll probably block more than anything. So maybe it is more like Mercedes Lewis. But at the same time, I do think that, just looking at this list, you're like, holy shit. I mean, we're talking about massive upgrades, not small incremental ones like, Tevin Jenkins and Joe Tooney. Even if you just look at the on-field play, that is a huge improvement. Tevin Jenkins is a good player when he plays, but Joe Tooney's big improvement there. You know what I mean? Yep. So Coleman Shelton to Drew Dahlman, massive improvement.
Yeah.
Yep.
You look at Byron Cowart to Grady Jarrett. That's a total difference right there.
Yeah.
Even if you consider Zach Pickens in that role, it's a huge improvement.
You could take any defensive lineman we have, with the exception of, oh my gosh, our edge rusher. Sweat. You could take anybody outside of Montez Sweat on the defensive line, and that's a huge upgrade having Grady Jarrett there.
Yep.
Any of them.
So we definitely have improved this offseason. You have to hand it to Ryan Poles. On paper, he's done a great job.
Yes.
As Bears fans,
this before too, unfortunately.
There's always a chance the wheels come off somewhere, But I feel pretty good about this offseason. When they hired Matt Eberflus, I didn't even know who he was. I always say that if I asked my phone Siri, who's Matt Eberflus, she didn't even fucking know. But
I will say too, I think a big underrated part of this is having Dennis Allen, because Dennis Allen, this is something that I wanted to see from the Matt Eberflus defense the whole time he was here, was more aggressive play. Like, your corners are insanely good in man coverage. Play them man. They will do it.
Yep. But
he refused. Everything was zoned. It's 3rd and 15. Let's play so soft that we're, 20 yards deep, and then we're giving up a first down on 3rd and extremely long all the time. Like, at what point do you actually make adjustments to that stuff?
Yep.
And Dennis Allen is going to be aggressive. Now, sometimes you're going to get burnt. It's going to happen. But with this defense, I think they're going to have a lights-out season. They're going to be really, really good. I have always liked Dennis Allen's defenses.
One thing I want to mention real quick, I want to get you guys' thoughts on this, because I kind of had an interesting take from this myself. So at the owners' meetings, Ryan Pauls was talking about, I can't remember who it was with. If it was with the press conference, or if it was like with the Fox 32 interview he did with Luke Canellis or something like that. He was talking about the importance of communication with the coaching staff in regards to prospects in the draft. And he specifically mentioned Dennis Allen. He said, Dennis Allen is, in particular, he's like, this guy is really good at communicating what he's looking for in his players, and he mentioned the defensive line specifically. Let me see if I can remember what he said.
He did.
How he wants him to attack the guy in front of him more so than two gapping or moving laterally, and even more so than just shooting your gap and penetrating, which is.
Did you notice it was like exactly opposite of what Eberflus did? Like it was almost like he was saying, hey, this is what your old guy did. We're not doing that anymore.
Well, I was just going to say, so like that's basically what they did with the last regime, is just penetrating your gap. They weren't worried about anything else but shooting your gap and doing your responsibility in that regard. Now, this is a little different because we're talking about attacking the guy in front of us, which, to an extent, it's still penetrating. But now you're trying to in my opinion, the way I looked at it was now we're trying to take this guy out of the freaking play. So now instead of just penetrating our gap and disrupting the pocket, now we're taking not only are we disrupting the play and disrupting the pocket, we're taking this guy out of the play so he can't make a play on the back end or make a play on or whatever. You know what I mean? Run a guy down. That's what I took from it. I thought it was really interesting to hear him say that. So I kind of wanted to see what you guys thought about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Either one of you?
I love it. I love that. All great points that you just made. Yeah, the attacking defense, we didn't do enough of it. I'm hoping that Dennis Allen, whatever he's cooking up back there, we're getting a ton more pressure. We didn't put enough pressure on opposing quarterbacks last year. He's going to dial up some blitzes. You're going to see, safety, corner blitz, linebacker blitz, and hopefully we're generating enough pressure with the acquisitions we just gotten, Odengbo and Grady Jarrett. Untapped potential with Odengbo, I think, man. Really, I'm really anxious to see what he can do.
He just screams Dennis Allen guy. That's what I think. Dennis Allen said, "Hey, I want this guy. This is what I want." And Grady Jarrett.
I was just going to say, I think Dexter is about to take off this year. I thought he was going to take off last year, but I think year 3 in this defense, in this style of play, I think he's about to really, really take off because you got to remember too, he did such a totally different thing in college than what he's been doing in the NFL, and this is still pretty similar of a defense to what he's been doing. So I don't think it's going to be a huge difference for him now. But I just think with 2 years under his belt, he's had an opportunity to change his body over the course of 2 years and really get suited for this defense and the style of play. I think he's about to take a huge jump, and I think he's going to be a big – he had, 5.5 or 6 sacks last year? That's pretty damn good for an interior defensive lineman in his second year. So I think
he had a lot of pressures too. A lot of pressures.
Yes.
Somebody had compared him and Jalen Carter to this point so far.
Right.
They're like almost identical, if not better, on Dex. Yep. But everybody talks about Jalen Carter still on all of our networks because we should have taken that guy. Yeah, I will never understand that. Like, we were never in a position to take a guy like that. We just weren't. And he's not even a better player than Dexter so far.
Yeah, we're pretty good with how we ended up with Wright and Dexter.
Yeah. Yes.
Pretty happy.
There were just too many question marks there with him to do that. I mean, you can't deny the talent, but where the team was at that time, I think now, if you look back now, and it was at this time with Grady Jarrett room and stuff, with the veteran leadership they have now more so than where it was then, maybe you can make that swing now. But 2 years ago, no, I don't think that was.
Yeah, imagine Jalen Carter having to go through the 2 longest Bears losing streak in the history of the team. That might not have turned out very well. The attitude, look what it did to some of the solid veterans on our team. I mean, Jalen Johnson, there was one, it was around Thanksgiving before they canned Eberflus. The players lit into Eberflus. It was so bad that some of the coaches and upper management left the room. I think Ryan Poles had to leave the room because the players lit into Eberflus. Eberflus left the room. And after that, he was fired. They just couldn't handle Eberflus anymore. This is the first time the Bears had ever fired a coach during the season. I wanted him gone before the season, to be honest. And there was always the talk of whether Ryan Poles it's my guy, I'm going to keep him there, or if George McCaskey wouldn't let Ryan Poles fire him because Ryan Poles might have wanted to get rid of him. That was also the rumor, whether
I don't think he ever wanted to hire him to begin with.
He might never have wanted to hire him. I know.
Maybe.
That's true.
I'm one of those people. I've always had I try to have a long leash and not try to. I try not to say, well, we got to just get rid of this guy. I try to give him a chance as long as I can. But there got to be points last year with Eberflus. It was just like, dude, there's no way you can continue on with this anymore. And sure as shit, they ended up firing him midseason. They've just never been done before.
I think everybody knew after that game he was done.
Yeah.
Because there was just no coming back from that. There just wasn't.
The fail Mary in Washington.
Yeah. That's where he should have been fired.
Yeah, he shouldn't have been on the plane with the team.
But that was a short week, right? They were going in on Thursday. Yeah, so that's probably the only reason that he stayed was because of that. But he should have been fired after that, especially after doubling down and saying, well, we made the right decision there. Well, if you would have just not given him that 15 yards, he would have even been in Hail Mary range. Idiot.
You know what? There's a comment here in the chat. There's a player that's being asked about that.
Okay.
Tim and I have not really talked about much on this show in the past. And Tucci, I'm not sure if you've really had a chance to dig into him much either, but this guy's an interesting prospect to me.
I agree.
Ravi wants to mention Jalen Walker and how he's an interesting pick with the ability to pass rush or cover. I think he's interesting too. And look, he's really, to me, this guy is he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he's a guy you're just going to line up at edge. I don't think he has the length or the bulk to, especially in this defense. I think he's a guy you're going to have to get creative to deploy. But I think if you can do it, like Dennis Allen, I think is a creative enough mind to make it work. I think you can really do some stuff with this guy. He is shown when he rushes passer from the linebacker position, he is a problem. So I think if they can, I think I see him I see some similarities to his usage, what you could do with him to a Micah Parsons, who's another guy who's not a traditional edge. I think you'd have to get creative with the way you use him. Yep. But I think he's, like I said, he's a really, really interesting guy. He's got tremendous athleticism. I like both the guys from Georgia. I like him and Mykel Williams, but I think either one of them, there's something to work with here. And I think they're both upside prospects. Jalen Walker is he's so twitchy, so athletic. I think he's an interesting guy to me. So I want to know what you guys think about him.
Ideally, you'd put him at the Sam linebacker where there's no longer a Jack Sanborn there. Mm-hmm. And then
real quick,
rushing. Yep.
Yeah, before you continue your play, I just want to mention real quick too. That's kind of where I have it. The one thing that takes in my head, where is this going to be a problem because of the fact that they play so much sub with so much nickel and Kyler Gordon is in there all the time.
Yep.
Does it make sense to take a guy who's going to be on the field maybe only in pass rush situations as of right now, anyways? But go ahead.
And that's a Dennis Allen thing. He runs a lot of nickel, two linebackers. Mm-hmm. But ideally, initially, you'd start him out probably at the Sam linebacker and then move him or as an eventual replacement for Edmonds or Edwards, where you playing him at will, let him run sideline to sideline and rush the passer as well. Or in the middle linebacker where he's going to make a lot of tackles, make some defensive calls. He gets lost in traffic a little bit for me. Danny Shimon loves him. Jalen Walker, and he can really rush the passer, man. And I tell you, one thing the Bears lacked last year was pass rush. So if you pick Jalen Walker, he is a guy I would consider in the first round.
Yes.
If you pick a guy like Jalen Walker, then you're going to get some pass rush juice, and you're probably getting a really good player for down the road when you're moving on from some of the linebackers that we have. But I wouldn't play him at edge. I think he could be a pass rush specialist in his first year, where he's coming in on third and long and just let him go get the quarterback. Mykel Williams, the other player you mentioned, he's the best run defending edge in the draft.
He's
no
good.
question. No question. With the long arms, he's got the weight, he's got the length. He is the best run defender at edge. If you are you're projecting how much pass rush you're going to get out of him, but he's a larger edge, which is what Dennis Allen likes. I could see that.
I do like him too. I like.
I was just going to say about as far as Mykel Williams. I know I've kind of talked about him a lot. He's a guy I like a lot in the draft. But I've mentioned before. I don't know if I love the idea of taking him at 10. I just think that if you're at 10 and you can't move down for whatever reason, and there's he might be the best guy available for you to take there, so you might have to do so. Because the fact that he might not have had the best of production as a senior, but again, or in his last year, I mean. I think it's important to note, though, he did have that ankle sprain. And I don't know if you guys have ever had a legitimate ankle sprain, especially I think it's a high ankle is where the real problem is, the lingering one. A high ankle sprain, because I had one, and it was that shit. I'm telling you guys, it's a long time to recover from that.
Yeah.
I just can't run low ankle for whatever reason now. But it takes so long to recover from that it's and being a pass rusher like that, it's got to limit what he was doing and the ability to play what he wanted, the way he wanted to play. But like you said, he sets the edge really well. He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got that ability to set the edge and play the run, as I just said. He's got pass rush upside. He did have 5.5 or 6 sacks, even with that ankle sprain. I think the production is not as quite where you'd want to be. He does need to refine his pass rush. I like the idea of moving down and getting, if they can move down to 15, 16 and scoop him up, I would be ecstatic about that. But, you know, if you got to take him at like 10, same thing with Kenny Grant, like Maddie says here. If Kenneth Grant is there around 16, 17 with the move down, I wouldn't mind that one bit either. He's a
I
one
would consider him at 10. That's how much I like him.
I would too. I don't know that I would do it, but I would definitely consider it if you have to. You know, if you can't.
He's got a little
like
boom or bust to him, but can you imagine him as our one tech, just like throwing offensive linemen around? And imagine Walter Nolan as the 3 tech. You got Grant on one side, Nolan on the other. Both those guys throw offensive linemen like dolls.
Well, here's the other part of that. You're not as concerned with boom or bust anymore because you have guys like Grady Jarrett on that defensive line now who are going to help these young players.
Andrew Billings
take the next step. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I love Kenny Grant. I would take him at 10, but ideally you would trade back, get an extra pick or two, and then select Kenneth Grant or Jalen Walker or Michael Williams, any one of those guys. It all depends on who's already gone.
Right.
And, if you get to pick 6 and pretty much 2 of the guys that the Bears are targeting, say Will Campbell or Ashton Genty or Tyler Warren are gone, what do you guys think of Tyler Warren?
I like him. I think he's it was interesting watching Ben Johnson talk about him at the owners' meetings.
And Dennis Allen, too.
I think he almost had like a little twinkle in his eye. Yeah, speaking of Dennis Allen, the way if you guys aren't familiar, he mentioned in one of the meetings he had, like I said, it was a press conference or one of the interviews he did. Ben Johnson was talking about Tyler Warren and how they were doing 20 or 30 of the top prospects in the draft between the coordinators and himself and Ryan Poles, and I think like Jeff King would have been there and Ian Cunningham. And he mentioned how they were looking at when they were watching Tyler Warren. He mentioned specifically Dennis Allen and how he would provide problems. Dennis Allen said this guy would be an issue for me as a coordinator to game plan against. He talked about some of the Wildcat stuff they could do with him and whatnot. So I think he's an interesting guy. I like the way he plays. His play style, I love his play style. He blocks he goes out there and blocks, not afraid to get after it.
Great. He might be the best blocking back in this draft.
He's pretty damn
blocking
good.
Tight end. Yeah.
He definitely gets after it. He will do what he's asked to do. He's not afraid to. I still think, if the Bears were to take him, I think Cole Kmet is still your inline guy, and he's a guy you're going to move out more as the U tight end, or F, whatever you want to call it. Because I think
he's legit 6'6".
Yeah, he's a big guy. And he can move though. He moves really well. I think he's got a little bit more wiggle than Kmet does. He's an interesting guy.
Kmet has always been stiff. I didn't really like him. I like him a lot better now. I mean, when he first came to the Bears, right, he was stiff.
Yes.
He did catch ball. He dropped so many passes. Like Dan Aguirre, a partner on Bear Their Souls, he used to be like, Kmet has the worst hands. He was like, he's always going to drop it. Don't throw it to him.
Now he never drops it. Now he never drops.
Now he's great.
He's improved a lot. I think I mentioned it earlier in the season, like when the season first started. Tim and I talked about on the show. I thought Kmet between last year and this year, his difference on the way he moved on tape, especially like speed, getting open, moving in his routes and getting open downfield, night and day. I mean, it's totally different.
Well, and in his defense a little bit, he wasn't really used much in the passing game at Notre Dame. But tight ends typically aren't at Notre Dame. They're more blocking than they are anything.
Do you guys like the Notre Dame tight end in this draft?
I do. I like him a lot, and I think if he hadn't gotten hurt, Mitchell Evans, and I think if he hadn't been injured, we'd be talking about him up in the top. He'd be a top high round pick because he was really, really good. He was actually the highest rated tight end on the board last year, and then he had the injury, and now he's way down.
Might be a late round steal.
He could very well be.
I think he's a typical Notre Dame tight end. I think
he's more of. I think he's more of that. He'd be more of like a move or U tight end than he would be in line.
But
he has a lot more receiving ability.
Yes, but here's the thing, though. Like, again, so Notre Dame tight ends, they
don't have movement skills.
They're not like a George Kittle coming out or a Travis Kelce coming out. They don't move like that. They're your traditional inline blocking tight ends who get the job done, and they're red zone targets for most part. And Mitchell Evans, he's a little bit more receiving threat, but again, he's still more of a typical Notre Dame tight end. He's not a first round kind of guy. If he was not hurt last year, as Tim said, I think he'd be like possibly a second round guy. But I think, I agree. If he could fall a little bit, he might be a guy you can get later on who's a nice little player for you. Notre Dame tight ends just they pan out. They always
Well,
do.
that's what I was going to say. You know what you're going to get out of a Notre Dame tight end. You can feel really good about drafting one.
Yep.
They all make.
Think
all of them. Anthony Fasano.
So many of them.
Obviously, we already talked about
John Carlson, Kyle Rudolph, Durham Smythe.
Yes.
Who was the one a couple years ago that went to Arizona? Gosh, I can't think of his name now. He didn't pan out so much like the other ones have. But who's the guy in Tommy Tremble in Carolina? This is guys right now playing. There's several of them.
Who's the guy that just got drafted like 2 years ago in the second round?
Went to Vegas. Michael Mayer.
Michael Mayer.
Yes, Michael Mayer. Yeah. Yep. So I mean, that's what they do. They churn them out. Yep. So I think he'll be a good player. I do. I really do think he'll be a good player. I just don't think
churn out some good ones in Iowa too. Here.
They do in Iowa. Iowa's more of that receiving threat than Notre Dame guys are.
I wanted George Kittle so bad in that draft, and
he wanted the Bears. He wants to play for the
Bears
Bears.
Fan. They got the Niners took him in the 5th round. In the 2nd round, we drafted Adam Shaheen. I was like, Ashland. Where the hell?
We all said that.
Heard of Ashland.
As soon as I heard that name, I was like, who the fuck is
in the 2nd round? What are we doing?
2nd round. Ryan Pace trying to outsmart everybody.
Yep.
It's like, come on, man.
He did have the measurables, but that's all he had.
Yeah, but Kittle, oh man, I really liked his game, man. He ran a decent at the combine. They slipped to the 5th round because tight end wasn't a premium position. Travis Kelce, I think was a 2nd round pick out of Cincinnati, and he had the deep speed. He was injured the first few years of his career, waiting for a long time for him to break out. And he had a Hall of Fame career, but now. He started to fall off. Age finally catches up with him. But you see what a tight end like a Travis Kelce can do. Led him to so many Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes. If the Bears were to have a player of that caliber at tight end, people say, well, maybe it's Tyler Ward. Maybe it's Colston Loveland.
I was going to say I would like Colston Loveland here more than I would like Tyler Warren here, just because – I think Colston Loveland gives you more of what you don't have in the tight end position, because I think Cole Kmet can do a lot of the stuff that you want to do. He can be more. I think Cole Kmet's more than just that inline guy. Everybody talks about how and he is an inline tight end, but he also does provide you a lot of what a move tight end can, because he does have a little more wiggle and speed and receiving ability than a typical inline tight end does. But I think it would be a bonus and a positive to have a guy who is more of a receiving threat than a blocker, especially when you brought in Smythe now. You've got the blocking tight ends. Maybe have a guy who could be more like a wide receiver, like Colston Loveland could provide you.
Yep, I agree.
But would I use a high pick on a Colston Loveland when you have other needs?
You have to get him in the 1st round.
Exactly. So
I was just going to say,
I don't think it's necessary to take a tight end early. My opinion.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people talking lately about how they actually prefer Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren. I've even seen people specifically talking about in the Bears situation, liking Colston Loveland better than they like Tyler Warren. But in my opinion, seeing the way Ben Johnson talked about him, I think they would prefer to have Warren over Loveland. And I'm not sure either one of them is even going to have.
That could be smoke, though. We've seen the Bears do this a lot.
Yeah.
The thing with I know a lot of people, especially in the chat room, they love Josh Simmons or players like that, Will Campbell, and taking a left tackle in this draft. Like I've said, it's not a great draft for left tackles or offensive linemen in general. Really, there aren't that many. And to me, the thing that signaled that, of course, was the Bears upgrading their offensive line this offseason. But to me, it's like I'm not sure any left tackle that you take in this draft is going to beat out Braxton Jones or Kieran.
I don't think there's one.
I don't think there is either. If both, but there's also the belief among Bears fans that one Braxton Jones, hey, he might not be ready. And Kieran Amagaji, he might not be ready either, and he might not be good. But there's one guy I think who could play who could beat out those two guys, and that's Will Campbell. but eventually I think maybe long-term his position is guard in the NFL. But Will Campbell, I think this year would have a chance to beat those guys out at left tackle.
You haven't heard me talk about this, and I haven't mentioned his name all show. I was really proud of myself, but here I am again. Tooch, I like Armand Membu the best of any lineman in this draft. I think he's the best one. But the problem is, I don't know that he's playing tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, he can play right tackle for sure, but can he play on the left side? I don't know. Yeah. And you're not going to take a guy that you're not sure can play left tackle unless that's where you plan on having him. I mean, I think he's a really good guard too.
To me, he's a tackle. I think he could play left tackle. He hasn't done it though, and he hasn't played a lot of football. He immigrated from Cameroon. It's not Cameroon isn't the hotbed of football like Texas or Florida. But I think he's got the feet to play left tackle. He's got long anarms and he's got some sand in his pants. He's like 330 pounds. He's like 6'3". Which is short for a tackle. But I mean, Tyrone Smith, I think, was 6'4". Josh Connolly's 6'4".
I think he's like 6'3.5". So he's not like super short.
To me, right. I think he could play left tackle. A lot of people don't think he can. The Bears might think he can. I don't know.
Right.
If the Bears can't trade up or trade back, and you're sitting at 10, and Ashton Genty and Will Campbell are gone, I would seriously consider him.
I mean, if he's there, yeah. I mean, I don't think he'll be there at 10 either. But I mean, if he was sitting there at 10, just because of how good of a player he is and the value of offensive line play, because at the very least, like maybe he doesn't start right away, and that would kind of suck. But at the same time, he's a guy you can work in at tackle. But you can also – there's always injuries, so he's probably your first guy in on the interior, either right or left guard. And if it doesn't work out with Jonah Jackson for whatever reason, as we saw last year, didn't play all that great. I think he'll be fine in this offense. But if it doesn't work out with him, you have his replacement already in line to play. I mean, look, the Eagles a couple years ago – now this was a third-round pick, mind you, so it's a little bit different. But they took Cam Jurgens, knowing full well he wasn't going to play right away. He did end up starting at guard, but he moved in and took over for Jason Kelce last year like it was nothing. So, I understand. It's this, like I talked about before. It's you continue to draft trench players. Yep. It's going to pay off because you're going to end up using them. But one thing before you say your point, Tim, I want to make this point. And again, guys in the chat, real fast. We don't have a ton of time left here. So if you have questions you want us to answer, please get them in there and we'll try to get to them best we can. Yep. But real quick, I want to
still haven't talked Case Keenum yet.
Exactly.
And I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions about the guy, but go ahead and continue on the offensive line because to me, the offensive line is super important this year. I think we have 6 guys, maybe 7, and the coaching staff of the Bears and management has said we need 10 offensive linemen. So, I mean, but to me, there are some later round offensive linemen who are projections, but they could offer some quality depth if they're scouted well and coached well. I don't think you need to pick an offensive lineman in the first round to have success this year. Yeah. And like I said, anybody might not be beating out either of the 2 left tackles on this roster unless there's an injury.
Right. Well, the point I was going to make was so here everybody keeps talking about, right, that the real value in this draft is between like 20 and 70, right? That's probably where the majority of the players are that are like it's kind of, everybody's pretty much graded around the same area in that spot. We talked about before, there's not a lot of blue chip players. And here's a tweet from Adam Hogue from Ryan Poles on this year's draft. Top blue players, I think that's condensed pretty small in round 1. And then there's a wide range of really good starting level players that are going to range from probably single digits all the way to 50, 60, 70. So that tells me,
exactly what you said, Jeff.
Right. You're probably not going to get a guy in the top 10 that's a blue chip player. And if you can't, you try to move down, and then maybe you get another guy in that 650, 60, 70 range, another draft pick in that area. So now you get another starting caliber player that maybe doesn't have to start right now, but he's a future piece for you. So to give you an example of what I'm thinking. So let's just give you guys a scenario of what I think could happen. So let's say they move down to round 1. They take a guy like Kenneth Grant. They take a guy like Mykel Williams, like we talked about before, something like that, right? Now they pick up an extra second-round pick. So now in the second round, you can address your running back position with one of those guys that are likely still to be on the board, or probably starting caliber material. You could
address
address the offensive line, like a Gray Zabel, like a Donovan Jackson, somebody like that. I see a commenter in there talking about both those guys. Love them both, especially Zabel. And Zabel could be a center of the future too, potentially. So that's another thing. He's got flexibility in the interior of the line. He's played all 5 positions in college. Yeah. So you look at this like
he's another guy I would consider in the first round.
Absolutely, especially late in the first round. So, you're talking
all
about
5 positions.
Yes. He might not have the length to play tackle in the NFL, but he's done it.
Right. He can fill in there, though, in a pinch.
Exactly. So, you talk about this, you move down, you get that extra pick. Now you're getting that value pick. And matter of fact, we have a clip here, if you can get to it, too, from the owners' meetings about Ben Johnson talking about the value of this draft. And I want you guys to see what he says, because this is part of the reason why I think if they can get a suitor, I think they are going to move down.
It's a great draft to have those day 2 picks. 39, 41, 72, I think those are great value picks this year. You're going to be able to find some really good players that can be contributors, maybe not day 1, but at some point over the course of the season. And we'll see. We have some depth concerns throughout the roster that we're looking to fill. But we feel really good about how the rosters come together through free agency.
So, like I said, you're talking about a value being in that area. You move down and get another pick in that spot, man, you are cooking with gasoline at this point, at least in this draft, in my opinion. So what do you guys think? Tim, you were going to say something, I feel like, but I don't know if it had anything to do with that.
It didn't. It had to do with Membo, so don't worry about it.
Hold on. Can we hear it?
Sure. I was just going to say that I was just going to say that blue chip players we talk about, I think Membo is a blue chip player, because I look at guys who have elite skills in their position, and he has elite footwork, elite feet for that position on the line. His lateral quickness for a tackle or an offensive lineman is insane. And we've seen how athletic this guy really is. So I was just saying it for the point of, you're talking blue chip guys. If Membo falls to 10, you take a blue chip player like him, because why would you pass a blue chip player if he's there, And that's like, again, I've talked about it before with the Eagles, how they built that thing up. To me, they're not done on the offensive line. And if you can get, let's face reality, Tooney's probably doesn't have that much longer playing in his career period, let alone maybe even with the Bears, he might only be here for 1 year. We don't know. And then Jackson, he's only got a few years left, and we'll see how his health plays out, or if, maybe he has a bad season. Again, like Jeff said, maybe they look at a guy like that and say, hey, and this guy can fill in at either, for sure, at right tackle. He probably play guard. Maybe he can play left tackle. We don't know. Why not take the elite, blue chip player there?
Yeah, I think
go ahead.
in a few years, we might be saying, Membo was one of the blue chips in that draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that it's very possible he could be. He's definitely got the potential. J2K mentions Jonas Savaiane. I love this guy, J2K. I think he's another guy in that area. You get another second-round pick. You potentially look at this guy. I love his play styles. I mentioned that before with a couple other guys. I love the way this guy plays.
He's a bad dude.
Tenacity. He's mean. He moves pretty well for a big guy too. So I like him a lot. I think he could make sense. I don't know if he's a great fit for the offense, but I think he's good enough to where I think I think they could seriously look at him. I love the guy.
The same hometown as Olin Kreutz.
Yeah, both from Hawaii. Yeah, so I think it's
right outside Honolulu. Yep.
Yeah, I think he's a nice little guy in that area to look at. I would love if they drafted him. Like I said, I love his play style. I think he'd be a great fit in the room. I love his demeanor, the way he's mean on tape, and I think it'd be great for the Bears. So I do like him, J2K, a lot. What else was I going to see here? There was another question I wanted to look at, but let's talk about because we've been passing on this. Let's discuss this Case Keenum thing real quick. So at the owners' meetings, actually, I think it was on, if I'm not mistaken, it was on Hogan Johns. Mm-hmm. We got Lawrence Fishburne here at last. But anyways, so Case Keenum at the owner meetings, I believe I can't remember if it was the owner meetings or it was the Hogan Johns podcast, but it was at the owner meetings regardless. They were talking about, Poles was talking about the possibility of, they had discussions about bringing in a veteran quarterback.
Yes.
And when I first heard that, my thought was, what do they mean when they say that? Are they talking about just bringing in a guy for camp that he can kind of learn from, see how he learns the playbook, see how he takes care of himself, see how he practices, things of that nature? Because they've already got Tyson Bagent there, and in my personal opinion, I would be surprised if anybody actually beat out Tyson Bagent for the backup quarterback spot, even Case Keenum. He does have up to $3 million in the contract. I don't know what the guarantee is. I kind of would be surprised if he actually made it past onto the 53-man roster, I should say. And so I want to give you guys my thoughts on this real quick. So I want to ask your opinions too. So in my opinion, this signals one of two things. Either one, Tyson Bagent is a legitimate trade candidate. They're going to possibly look to move on from, which I severely doubt. The only way I could see that being a possibility is if somebody offered him like a second-round pick or something for him, which I don't think is going to happen. Or, as I said before, I think he's the guy you bring in. Caleb learns from him in camp, all the way through up to like where you have to make the final cuts. You can see how the guy does things. He's a great mind in the building to have. And then maybe you potentially keep him on the practice squad, but he's a good enough player that somebody's probably going to bring him in as their backup. So I kind of want to see what you guys think about that. But I think it's one of those two things.
Those are the big questions surrounding this. Are the Bears? Another one might be: are the Bears going to keep 3 quarterbacks? I'm not so sure they will. Most teams don't. Some teams do, and if the Bears are interested in keeping Case Keenum throughout the whole season, and the Texans did it. They had Stroud, Davis Mills, and Case Keenum. So they did carry 3. There's always the possibility that they're going to carry 3. And they want this veteran leadership to sort of help bring Caleb Williams along. Now, can Case Keenum still play at a high level? That's the one thing we don't know. He hasn't played since 2023, and he only appeared in 1 game then. And like I said, he's signed for 1 year, $3 million. That's the only detail we know about the contract. But he brings a lot of NFL experience. He's 37. Yes. It's his 14th season. He's appeared in 80 games. Has started 66 of them.
Where you go, Texas? Texas, right?
University of Houston.
Houston.
He broke all those records. Yeah.
Yep. He was. He threw for a ton of touchdowns, a ton of yards.
It was like a 5th or 6th round pick or something.
He was the Tyson Bagent of D1.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. He's a lot like Tyson Bagent. This will be his 8th NFL team. So he's, he's been in a lot of locker rooms, has been with a lot of coaches, been in a lot more than a few playbooks and offensive systems. His best season was 2017 with the Vikings. He was 11-2 as the starter. He led the team to an NFC championship where they lost to Nick Foles and the Eagles. The Eagles went on to win the NFL championship, the Super Bowl that year against the Patriots. So will they keep 3 quarterbacks? I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think, Tim?
I think it's more of a
camp arm.
Keep him, he's probably a camp arm and practice squad guy. Because at this junction in time, I don't think teams are going to be running to go sign Case Keenum after camp, unless there's an injury or something. In which case, the Bears could just keep him on the active roster if they're worried about somebody trading or somebody signing him. But at this juncture, I would say, mostly camp arm, similar to probably what they did with Rippon last year.
Yeah,
Keenum's got a much longer career and has seen a lot more game film or in game situations than Rippon has. And at one point, Keenum been playing at a pretty high level too at times. So, and my first thought is I would assume there's some sort of connection here with Ben Johnson. I don't remember if he played for Detroit or not, or maybe he was in Miami when Ben Johnson was there. I would think there's some familiarity somewhere. I don't know that though.
Yeah, let me see. Get it here if I could find it. He would be the 4th quarterback on the Bears roster if you include Austin Reed, who was
right. And I know they like Reed too.
They like Reed. At
least the last staff did.
Most teams bring 4 quarterbacks to camp, just because they don't want Caleb's arm to get overwork to go into the season with a dead arm. But let's see. He was with the Texans. So I think they crossed path with the Rams. It wasn't Ben Johnson, a quality control assistant with the Rams, either St. Louis or Los Angeles. I could be wrong, but he's been on the Texans, the Rams, the Vikings, the Broncos, the Redskins, the Browns, the Bills, and now the Bears. So the Bears will be his 8th NFL team. I want to say that they crossed paths, with the Rams. But
And most likely did.
I'm not sure. I'm just guessing there. But can he? The guy could it be that the Bears spent $3 million just for up until an off-season tutor for Caleb Williams? It's possible.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. It's reported up to $3 million, so that's what leads me to believe is the incentive. You're only going to make $3 million if you actually make the 53, which we don't plan for that to be the case.
Yeah,
it's kind of what I wonder.
Do you think? And I agree with this. Jeff said, would Tyson Bagent be a trade a target? For teams that are looking for either a second quarterback or even possibly a starter. I know lots of people in the chat are Tyson Bagent stans, and they think he could be a quality NFL starter. And teams like the Giants, I forget who else, don't really have settled quarterback rooms right now. But could Bagent be an option for a team? I don't know. I don't think we've seen enough. He was thrown into 4-game situation when Justin Fields was injured, and Tyson's rookie year, he went 2-2. Looked great in camp that season. That's what allowed the Bears to cut. I forget who was the name of the quarterback that we had that they cut in favor of Bagent. I can't remember, but
oh gosh, guy from Carolina. Shoot. Why can't I think of his name?
Andy Dalton.
I know you're talking about Cannon Arm.
PJ.
PJ Williams.
Yes. Cannon Arm.
That's right. Yep. That allowed us to cut them, and then he went to the Browns and he flamed out there. So they made the right decision. Do I think the Bears should keep Tyson Bagent? Probably, because I think Case Keenum, the mind may be able to play the position. I don't know if the body can play the position.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I just like I said, the whole thing I have an issue with is I don't see a scenario where anybody could offer the Bears enough for them to let Tyson Bagent go. I mean, he's too quality of a backup quarterback for them to say no, unless it's a second round pick. Even if you offered him a third rounder, are you going to let a quality backup quarterback go for a third round pick who may not ever even start? I mean, I don't know, man. That's a lot to ask. So
this might be the year they trade him, though, because this is the last year he's under contract. Because he did not get a rookie deal because he was an undrafted free agent. He only gets 3 years, not 4. So maybe this is the year that he's gone. Maybe they trade him.
They could always extend him.
Correct. They could. But is he really going to want to be he's already made it known he wants to be a starter in the NFL. Is he really going to take an extension if there's an opportunity for him to start elsewhere?
Yeah. Agreed, Tim. Yep.
That's a good point.
Yeah. When's he out of contract? I think not after this season. No,
it's after this season. Because he only gets a 3-year deal for being undrafted.
Right, for being undrafted. Yep. It's after this season.
Yep. So this might be when they trade him.
Yep. They might be thinking to trade him. Seeing what they could get.
He might be thinking trade me at this point.
And then there was that whole thing with his dad popping off on social media last year too, which kind of was he leaking locker room. So Tyson was telling his dad stuff, and his dad was leaking stuff to the media. There was that whole thing. The Bears might not be happy about that.
Right.
His dad's kind of like an attention. Yeah, I was gonna say his dad's kind of like an attention fiend, and maybe they're kind of like. I don't know if we like this too much kind of thing,
But, yeah, you're right. You guys are both right. I mean, the Bears may be looking to trade him, and Tyson Bagent may be looking to get a trade. But what do you guys think his value is, though, as far as draft picks?
He'll probably – he's a quarterback, so automatically it's going to drive the price up.
Yep, but it's still
I would not be surprised. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would not be surprised if somebody offered a first-round pick just because he's a quarterback. They just got, I mean, what was it, Matt Flynn a couple of years ago, where what they offer him for that,
yeah.
and then they end up using Russell Wilson. But
Matt Flynn,
my opinion, he's probably going to get a 2. He's probably
a first round pick for Rick Meyer,
right? I think he's probably going to get a
pick.
second round pick. I think they'd probably get a 2 for him.
If I have a comparison myself for this, and this isn't really even a good comparison because the guy was a second round pick in his own right, and he did start a little bit and showed flashes of being a starter, is Jimmy Garoppolo, and they got him for a second round pick, if I'm not mistaken, when they traded him from New England. Where did he go again? Was it San Francisco at first?
Yes.
Yeah. I believe it was a second round pick, right? So, that to me, like that's like the scenario. If they're gonna get, like, that's the most they could get for him, I think, as a second rounder. And I don't even know if anybody's going to offer that. I think his value, based on what we see, because you got to remember, he's only started 4 games in the NFL. So he does show an ability to be a quality backup quarterback. But I mean, as far as value, if any team is going to look to trade for him, I don't think anybody's going to offer more than a 4th round pick for him. My personal opinion.
They got a 5th round pick for Joe Milton.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The
and
Patriots.
It's the same thing. The guy who shows starting ability, he has traits though that Bagent doesn't have. I mean, Milton has an absolute cannon for an arm and a gun that Bagent doesn't have. Bagent can make deep throws and stuff down the field fine, but he's not going to drive the ball down the sideline, like some of these guys are. So
you're talking, there could be a team just right there right now that is desperate for a quarterback, and they're not in position to draft one. And they may say, hey, this guy is – again, I don't think somebody's going to give up a first-round pick, but I'm just saying it would not surprise me because of the position and how important it is for teams to get the quarterback and to get it right.
Yep.
But I could definitely see the Bears getting a second-round pick out of him. I could definitely see that happening because of the desperation to have a quarterback, for sure.
I would put his value at like 4th round, but I could see
exactly
higher or lower from there. Now, to me, I would compare Tyson Bagent a lot to Case Keenum.
Yeah.
They're not far apart as players. Bagent may be a little taller.
Probably solid career backup quarterbacks. Very solid, but probably not starting caliber.
The arm strength of Tyson Bagent, not above average. I would say average. Definitely nowhere near Caleb Williams' arm strength, of course. But another guy I might liken the game, ability to play the game and similar careers, Gardner Minshew, who kind of was an unknown late-round pick, who happened to turn out to be a guy who could start in the league. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if people are looking for a Minshew or a Case Keenum, or maybe even someone a little bit higher than that, I would put Tyson Bagent above Mac Jones. And Mac Jones started in the league. I played a few games for Jacksonville last year even.
Well, J2K is mentioning Kenny Pickett here and how they just traded him for but Kenny Pickett was proven to be bad.
I would take
Tyson Bagent over when he played.
Yeah. I would take Bagent over Will Levis.
Yes.
So those are just some. You might be right. We might be able to get a second-round pick out of him. Will Levis was a second-round pick. Of course, I think if the Titans draft Cam Ward or to trade Will Levis, they're probably not getting much more than a 5th-round pick for Will Levis. Maybe a 4th-round pick. But yeah, Matty, thank you again. Buying us a cup of coffee here. That's great. Great show, fellas. Let me flash that up there. Sorry about that. Great show, fellas, and I agree with Tim. I could see a team thinking I can work with that. Talking about Tyson Bagent. Yeah, I agree too. I think you never know. And the Bears may be looking for a little bit more draft capital in this draft. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're thinking they want to trade up and grab a guy. We don't know who it would be. Maybe it's Abdul Carter. Maybe it's Ashton Genty. Maybe they want to trade up and grab one of the players that they think is a blue chip player, Matty. Because like everybody said, whether it's Greg Gabriel or Ryan Poles, who both quoted that there's only a handful of blue chip players, and we're at 10. They're in striking distance. Mm-hmm. They are in striking distance. Would you guys part with the 10 and maybe 39 or 41 to move up to grab a guy like Abdul Carter if he fell because of his foot injury, or to grab?
It would have to be Carter. I don't think I would do it for anybody but Carter.
I think the Bears. I think the Bears might try to trade up for Ashton Genty. I'm not saying you guys would.
I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't give up 10 and 39 or 41 for Genty. Maybe,
I know,
maybe,
but the Bears might,
like a 4.
Ryan Poles might.
How far up they're trying to move,
The Bears might do it though. I'm just saying, don't be shocked if they do it.
I wouldn't be shocked. I just don't know.
We've done dumber things. We traded up for one slot for Mitch Trubisky.
You're right, but again, it kind of leads me back to like the thought before. It's like, where is the strength in this draft? What were the comments Ben Johnson just made?
Right.
The owners made. It just leads me more to believe, like, if they're going to do anything, it's move down and get another pick in that area. They move up and get.
They might see this kid as the next Saquon
or
Tomlinson. I don't know.
Maybe.
To me, he is. He's one of the top 3 players in the draft. To me, Travis Carter, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and Ashton Genty. To me, those are my top 3 players in this draft. Cam Ward he's up there because he's a quarterback, but I wouldn't put him above any of the first 3 quarterbacks in last year's draft.
Probably not the first 5 quararbacks in last year's draft.
Yeah, and I think Cam Ward is definitely he's got the best arm in this draft. I love Tyler Shuck though, man. If you watch his tape, man, he's good, man. He's smart. He knows the game. He's just he's older and he's had some injury history, but he is a guy that isn't afraid to come in and start, man. I'm telling you, it's a perfect Packers pick.
I can see him being like a late day 2 guy coming in 3rd round or something.
Late day 2.
That. Yeah.
He could even be high day 2. But what are some players you guys think could look at that. I said something right. Yeah.
J2K says Tooch is right. If Poles can get a blue chip player, he might make that play. Knowing Poles, I mean, with the Rome thing last year, it's like he had his eyes set on the guy and he was ready to move up and get him, and he got lucky that he fell to us. But I
wanted Brian Thomas Jr. That was my guy.
Yeah,
I liked him over Rome. I was like, I didn't see a lot of separation from Rome in college. With Brian Thomas Jr., he was 5 yards ahead of all the DBs, and he played in the SEC. Malik Neighbors was another guy. There was no way we were going to get Malik Neighbors. So I was like, I love Brian Thomas Jr. I wanted him. And, man, you saw the separation that Thomas Jr. He touchdowns, the speed, all of it, the size. But I'm happy. I like Rome, too. Man, Rome's got real potential, too. I just he doesn't have the wheels that Brian Thomas Jr. has.
I think he's fast enough, and I think he's the best route runner on the team already right now. I mean, now that Keenan Allen is gone, but – I mean, he's got a twitch that even DJ doesn't have. DJ's a hell of an athlete too, man. He's got great strength, but he's not the route runner that Rome is. Rome is a guy who can be a legitimate, like, big time receiver, like a guy who can do it all, who can be a real weapon in the passing game. And I'm going to be interested to see his growth this year too. But I like Dallas Turner last year, and for reasons that I mentioned before, it's like it's hard to find edge rushers outside of the first round. And if you have early picks, you might want to consider getting one if you got a good one there. And I liked him a lot. Of
that's
course,
the wild card. I think that's the wild card here. Is edge rusher. James Pierce, he's probably the best pass rusher. Maybe you could say Mike Green in this, the best pure pass rusher. But neither of those guys play the run. Dennis Allen likes his guys to be able to play the run, be able to set the edge. James
and they
Pierce,
both have short arms, right? I mean,
a little shorter arms.
They both
short arms. They don't play the run well. But, I could see if the players that they like the best, they can't trade up. Will Campbell's gone. Tyler Warren's gone. Ashton Genty's gone. And Membu's gone. Those 4 players I could see the Bears considering in the top 10. And if those guys are gone, they may say, fuck it, let's just either trade back or take one of these pass rushers. I could even see him taking – look, if Will Johnson drops her, and Will Johnson is sitting at 10, I don't know, man. I mean, let's look at who I have.
Another donation here.
Thank you, Matty.
I can't say that he's not a good player because I do think he's a good player. But if you look at his career stats, they're pretty good stats, man.
Yeah.
He just had that one game in Washington, The one game in Washington where he lost.
Well, Al Harris came in and already went and took Tyreek Stevenson. So hopefully that's going to fix that.
I think there's just across the board last year with what was going on at the end of the season with Eberflus, and as you mentioned, Tooch earlier with the players going after him. I just think a lot of it was like some of these players were kind of checked out, and I think Tyreek Stevenson
they were checked out.
Just kind of checked out, especially after that Hail Mary play. He's just like kind of done now.
The crowd get to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of room for him in this defense to be a good player. I think they like him. I think Al Harris likes him. I think it's going to – and Ben Johnson was talking about him a little bit too. I think I'd be surprised if they took a corner with a premium pick this year because of the fact that they do have some depth there, especially with Terrell Smith.
I agree. We got a ton of defensive backs.
Yeah, so I would be surprised by that one, but just
the only reason I mention it is because it's a premium position in the first.
It is. It absolutely is. And if you're not 100% convicted in a guy, and you see a guy in the draft that you are pretty damn convicted on, you might consider that. You might.
I just can't find a trading partner. He might be the best player on the board. Hey, whatever. How much time do we get to make a pick in the first round? 15 minutes.
10
minutes.
Yep.
10 minutes. We're getting to 9 minutes, and then Will Johnson's the best player on the board. We can't trade out of the pick. Yeah. Then I can see him doing something like that. And the only reason they couldn't trade out of it. But yeah, if Ben Johnson tells Poles I need Ashton Junty, Poles will go and get him. I guarantee you.
Yes,
I can see it. Absolutely.
And to be honest, there's quite a bit of steam that Junty to the Bears. That's the player they want. And that's the only reason I say it. That's the only
like I said before, it kind of reminds me of like Roma Dunze last year. It's like if Poles gets this idea in his head that Genty is his guy, he might just do whatever it takes to go get him. And I agree with you. If like Ben Johnson really wants him, they're going to do whatever they can do to go get the guy. It's possible that that's the case. I just don't know.
They trade up and lose some of that draft capital. They might.
That would suck, man. It would be nice. It's like
agent, we traded you.
Yeah.
You're looking at it right now. I say right now, it would suck to lose that draft capital. I mean, we could be looking at in a year or two and saying like, man, that was the best move they could have possibly made. Because look at the impact he's having. So I mean, it's always one of those crapshoot things where it's like you don't know for sure what you're going to get. You don't know for sure what the best move might be. I just think, like I said before, with the way this draft is in particular, with where its strengths are, I just think it makes a lot more sense to try to either move down and get another pick in that area or just, stay strong there. But I mean, like you said, if you want to get a blue chip player and that's the only way you're going to get one is to move up, then you might just do it. So there is a couple more things in here real quick. So there's first of all, there was a donation, another donation from Maddie I want to mention in here. Said BJ, like you mentioned before, Ben Johnson says to Poles, let's go get Genty, let's do it. They probably will.
Yep.
And then also
above the Raiders.
Yeah, I think he's going to go top 7 too. I think the Raiders are that's where everybody's talking about him going. I think that makes a lot of sense. Pete Carroll understands the importance of the run game. They've got a quarterback right now in Geno Smith. They just extended him. So I think that makes a lot of sense for them to go running back there now, more so than it did before.
Yeah.
And just, that's where kind of what I think is going to happen. There's another comment in here from.
There's a lot of people buying Ashton Genty jerseys if we do.
Yeah.
The Bears are going to make some money on his jersey.
They absolutely would. Yep. Comment in here from, I think it was from J2K if I can find it.
Yeah.
He says, where'd it go? I think I lost it now. There we go. We don't need another. That wasn't that one, but we didn't need another DJ Moore is what all I heard last year. So this year when I hear we don't need another, I tend to agree. It's like, you do what you take the player that's going to help your team. If it's a weapon, you take him. And I think that was an interesting comment from Johnson too. He made talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. We saw this guy as a weapon.
Drafted him at 12.
Yeah. And I see he's not the same area or the same kind of prospect, but the top 30 visit the Bears have with Rashard Smith.
Good player, man.
Who's
I was like, when Jahmyr Gibbs, I was like, when they took him at 12, I was like, that's a good pick. I mean,
he's a good player, real good.
I'm like, he had a lot of things, qualities that the Lions didn't have at running back. So I thought a lot of people knocked the pick. I was like, this could be a good pick, man.
Man, was it? It definitely ended up being a good one. I mean, it worked. The way they were able to work it out with him and Montgomery, it was just such a good fit.
3 touchdown possibility in a game.
Yeah.
3 touchdowns in a game in the NFL level. He's a 3. Damon, like James Cook is another guy like that. Saquon Barkley is another guy like that. These guys could easily get 3 touchdowns in one game. Derrick Henry,
very easily.
That's the players
Dynamic.
that the Bears might be looking for with that first round pick, is somebody that's going to give them touchdowns, going to give them explosive plays, and that player is on the offense. It's a terrible draft for wide receivers, though. There aren't a lot of explosive wide receivers. I like the kid from Ole Miss. I tell you, to me, he's the most explosive big receiver. I like Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. Watched him play. It's 30 minutes from my house. But all the guys with all of the great speed, they're all like Smurfs, They're all Smurfs. We got a couple Smurfs already with Olamide Zaccheaus and Devin Duvernay and Tyler Scott. I think they're looking for another X receiver, another big receiver. And there's plenty of those guys. There really aren't any that are pop out other than, to me, Jaden Higgins and Trey Harris from Ole Miss.
They did just sign they did just sign Miles Boykin, who is like a traditional X, to be some depth there. So that there is that. He's from Notre Dame, by the way.
And they could just want to go with 3 wide receivers.
They could, maybe
3. That's it.
And I do, like I said before, I think the speed is such a thing for them. I really do think they're going to try to address that. And a guy I mentioned earlier, Rashard Smith, top 30 visit guy that's coming in, probably like a 5th or 6th round guy.
Blue, another guy.
This guy's a weapon. We're going to use. He might not be a traditional running back. I don't know, because he's played some receiver too. But we can utilize this guy and make something from him.
They were at the Texas Pro Day too, looking at Jaden Blue.
Yes, they were.
So another guy that's kind of like a smaller Jahmyr Gibbs,
Yeah,
Rashard Smith and Jaden Blue, they're both under 200 guys, under 200 pounds. But they do have the long speed, But if you're looking, they're not every down backs. They're committee, running back by committee.
Yeah.
This conversation we could definitely carry this thing on forever. I feel like we really could.
Tim might be a little tired though, John.
I am very tired.
It's you and me if we want to go longer. I think, right? Is that
right?
You guys have kids? The other you guys?
I do. I've got 4 boys.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I got 1 boy and 2 girls.
Yep. So you understand.
And Jeff has
I had a dog who passed away a couple years ago. That's
got
about
a fur baby. That's right, a fur baby.
I did. Not anymore. He's unfortunately not with us anymore. But
is Jeff a good uncle though, Tim?
No.
I'm the best. Don't lie, Tim. I am the best uncle.
Okay. He's the uncle that. He's a good uncle. He is a good uncle. I don't want to take that away from him. He's but he's also one that's gonna push for, things that my kids don't need to see or hear yet. But he's gonna be the one to give it to them. He's the uncle that's going to use his foot to kick them into the pool when they're not looking, kind of thing, But in any case, I'm sure we got some questions here, guys. If you've got your questions, let's get to those.
All right.
We've had a really good show tonight. We appreciate you, Tooch, for being on here with us. It's been great conversation here.
This is the most fun I have in a week. Is talking football with you or Aldo or any of the other personalities on Barroom, Barfly Tailgate, and all the people in the chat room. Love all the chat. All of our loyal Barflies, that means a lot to me.
Same.
Totally
I love doing this with you guys. Yep. I enjoy it for sure.
The time went by so fast. What are we? We already blew 2 hours, and we're like,
I can't believe it.
Went by super fast. Yeah,
it did.
It's already getting dark in my room. I'm gonna turn a light on.
Yeah.
Yep. Did we get any questions? I don't know.
I didn't.
There's a couple of things in here. So there was one thing I wanted to mention. J2K was talking about. I think it was Jalen Lane was a top. Mentioned he was a top 30 visit. Is that his name? Jalen Lane.
Yeah. Oh, let me grab those top 30 visits real quick because he went.
I want to mention that real quick. I want to mention that real quick, and I don't think I'm not saying that there's anything illegitimate about it or anything like that, J2K. But my question about Jalen Lane is, I saw a tweet about him that said he was meeting with the Bears offensive staff. Now, the wording of that tweet led me to believe that if it was a top 30 visit, why wouldn't they just say it was a top 30 visit? If he's meeting with the offensive staff, now I realize he already had his pro day, so it wouldn't be at the pro day. But as far as I understand, a staff can go to the school, and Greg would be able to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but a staff can go to a school and meet with the guy anytime they want. They just can't bring him to Chicago.
Correct.
So if they want to go and meet with him as a staff in Mississippi, they can do so if they choose to do that. So I don't think that it's necessarily a top 30 visit, because I think it would have been worded that way. I could be totally wrong about that, but that's just my personal opinion on that. And to name off these top 30 visits that J2K has listed here, and thank you for this, J2K. I know at least 7 of these are from good, legitimate reporters. I have to look into some of these other ones because I haven't seen it myself today. But he's got Ashton Genty from Boise State, corner Jahdae Barron from Texas, offensive tackle Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon, safety Andrew Makuba from Texas, wide receiver Isaiah Bond from Texas, interior O-lineman Dylan Fairchild from Georgia. So, like I said, the only ones of those I don't know, and there's also here Jalen Lane from it was Virginia Tech, not Mississippi. Brashard Smith from SMU, offensive center Drew Kendall from Boston College, offensive center Jake Majors from Texas, linebacker Nick Martin, Oklahoma State, wide receiver Kelly Ikarari from Mississippi State. I'm not sure how to
heard of
pronounce
him.
it. I haven't either. That's a new one I have to look into because I
I'll
haven't
have
even
to
heard
look
that guy.
up
Maybe
him,
UDFA. So I don't know about some of those guys. I haven't seen it myself, but I know at least 7 of those guys that you mentioned in there, J2K, are I've seen from legitimate reporters myself. So I know they're good. And I agree. I'm not saying you're wrong. I have to look at it myself. But yes, that's an interesting little list there. I think it's seeing the 2 centers in there is kind of perks my ears up a little bit. They're probably more later round guys.
Yep.
Fairchild, I believe, is a guard. I'm not sure if he has center flexibility or not.
Yeah, he's raw, and but if you sign a
Yeah.
letter of intent with Georgia, you got to be pretty fucking good.
Mhm.
You're talking about the best football program in the USA, maybe Alabama or
certainly
Georgia.
the best developing program in the country for NFL talent.
And Georgia alumni are all over the NFL.
Brian's on here. He says he posted a question. I don't know if I see it. Here we go. In each of your opinions, without going into a mock, what's a successful draft look like to you? In my opinion, it's
a good question, man.
We need to get starting running back. In my opinion, we need to get a safety. And if we can get those 2 things and some offensive line and defensive line depth, I'm happy. That's what I'm hoping for. We need the 2, in my opinion, those are the 2 biggest needs we have on the roster, starting position-wise, because I don't know if Brisker is going to be a starter much longer, if at all. And we only have Byard for 1 more season. So, in my opinion, starting running back, safety, and then offensive and defensive line depth, and I'd be very happy.
Yeah, to me, you have to get a starting running back. That's imperative. If I were to say the next, you have to get a big defensive tackle in case something happens. We lose Andrew Billings. When Billings went out, our run game went to shit. And in fact, Ben Johnson mentioned something about once Billing went out, our defense couldn't stop the run. So I think 1 tech is a huge thing. I would love to see Kenneth Grant. Man, if you got a running back in the 1st round and Kenneth Grant in the 2nd, that would be fantastic.
That'd be crazy.
I think you might have to take Kenneth Grant in the 1st round, though. He may sneak into the 1st round. Someone else posts about Derek Harmon. Love Derek Harmon. He's a guy that can play 1 at tech and 3 tech. It reminds me a lot of Chris Jones, and he may end up being one of the top defensive tackles from this draft in a couple of years. We're looking back, we're saying, wow, Derek Harmon, that was a really good pick. I mean, the guy gets a lot of pressure from the defensive tackle. You can line him up at end too. You line him all across the 4 positions on the front of the defensive line. He's got the kind of big defensive end type body that Dennis Allen might like to play as a big end, and then move him inside passing downs. But I think you got to get running back, some kind of defensive tackle, preferably a nose tackle, and then offensive line depth. Tight end is definite need, and safety. So those 4 positions, I think, are the top 4 needs.
Yeah, and I'll just to give my thoughts on it real quick. I think this is a good question to finish on, unless you guys have some last second thoughts too.
Okay.
But Brian, in my opinion, I think let's just say, first of all, I'd be very upset if they walked out of this draft without addressing the depth at the offensive and defensive lines. If they don't get at least one player on both sides of the trenches, I'll be upset. I think they need to draft at least one player on both sides of the offensive and defensive lines. More than that would be great with me. I would like to see a running back taken, preferably a starter. Doesn't have to be, at least a guy who can contribute. I would like to see a safety at some point, a guy who can potentially take over, but I don't have to necessarily see that now, but I prefer to because we only have 2 safeties under contract right now, none after this year. So 2 starting safeties, I should say, and neither under contract next year. So I would like to see that addressed. And really outside of that, the team is pretty strong. I would like to see another slot receiver come in, but I wouldn't hate it if they didn't. They've got pretty good weapons on offense. So if they got a running back and they address the trenches, I think I'd be pretty happy regardless of what else they did. In my personal opinion.
You got to get a couple trench players.
Yes, absolutely.
No
You got to fix your depth there. They need a 1 tech for sure, at least some depth there. They could use some interior O-line depth. I think for sure they're going to be looking to address those areas, absolutely. And I could see an edge getting taken too. And a tackle. I could see an offensive tackle being taken somewhere in the draft.
Yep.
So Ryan says we got passing grades on our takes. We appreciate that.
To me, there's some late round offensive tackles, and that would be like an emergency 3rd round tackle. You know? But interior offensive line, I think the Bears might address, in the 4th, 5th round. What do we have? A 5th? We don't have a 4th round pick. We've got a 5th round pick.
We do have. Wait a minute. We don't have a 4th. We have a 5th. We don't have a 6th. We have 2 7s.
2 7s. Yep.
Yeah.
However, if Keenan Allen signs somewhere, I think we'll get a compensatory pick. Right? If Keenan Allen signs elsewhere, it's a possible compensatory pick.
We could, yeah. It depends on the. I think it depends on. It wouldn't be till next year, though. We wouldn't get the pick. It'd be next year, yeah.
And I actually highly doubt it because we signed so many players.
True. Yep. So we just signed Miles Boykin.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's gonna, and the value we would have to lose more value than what we gained, and I don't think that's going to be the case this year. The Bears haven't been good enough to lose the really good players to big contracts yet. Yeah,
and we haven't. I can't remember the last time we had a compensatory pick, to be honest.
Yeah.
Don't hold your breath.
I don't think I've ever seen one in my lifetime.
We did. Ryan Pohl's first year, we had several because of the players that left.
I don't think so, dude.
Yeah, we did. We had I want to say 1 3rd round comp pick, and we had maybe a 6th or 7th. I'm pretty sure we had a couple.
I think he traded down to get all that draft capital the first year. But
well, I know we traded down, but I thought we had a comp pick too. I could be wrong.
There's one more comment here from J2K I want to mention. He says he'd be happy with running back Brashard Smith, wide receiver Jalen Lane, and offensive center Jake Majors as our 5th and 7th round picks. Sign me up, J2K. If that's the way it falls, I'm all about it, bud. Yep. All aboard that train, because you got a big time speed there and a depth piece at center. So I'm all on board with that. Absolutely.
At least a couple gadget guys there too. If nothing else, Smith and Lane could be gadget players for sure. Ben Johnson could figure something out for him.
Yep.
So anyways, guys, it was absolutely fantastic show tonight. We really appreciate all the questions and the comments. Like, I know it's getting kind of dark on my end. Like I said, it's dark outside now. It was like
one of these a little ring light.
Yeah, I should have gone. I should get up and go turn the light on. But we're done anyways. So
it's been thunderstorming here all night long since I've been on the show.
That was $10 on Amazon. Maybe I'll get clips to my desk, and it's flexible.
I think I have the same.
It's got 3 temperatures.
Yeah, probably the same. Yes, I bet I have the same one. Yeah.
USB input. Yeah, it's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, to go pick one of those up. But yeah, like I said, it was a great show tonight, guys. We appreciate you being in the chat and helping to drive the conversation with your questions and your comments. We really appreciate you being here, Tooch, and helping fill in for Aldo.
That was fun, man.
Subbing in and producing for us, and also being a guest on our show. We love the commentary and the chat and just the overall chemistry between the three of us. I think it was really good tonight. So we appreciate you for that. And just real quick, guys,
to come back, I
mean, Jeff and I have no chemistry whatsoever, but Tooch and I have great chemistry. So
yes, please come on again in the future. And just a quick reminder, guys, all the things you do for us here, to please like the video and subscribe to the channel at Barroom Network here on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts from. You can follow us all on X or Twitter. I'm at _Jeff Willis. Tim is at Tim Willis 24. You can find Tooch over here at John Santucci, VIP, and I believe you spell that Santucci for those who are listening and not watching. And last thing, real quick, guys, if you want to find Tooch outside of obviously our show here, you can find him on Bear Their Souls, which is on Tuesday nights here in the bar room, and he also does the weekend sports betting tips on Friday nights. So check those out.
Final Four show tonight, but my guys' handicappers weren't available tonight, so maybe we'll try tomorrow. But do you guys like college basketball?
I used to get into it when I was younger, but honestly, I don't think I've watched a single college basketball game, and I can't even tell you how long, too. It's just been a while.
I love college basketball. It's one of my favorite times of year, the NCAA tournament. And that first round of the NCAA tournament, wagering on the first round of games, round 1 and round 2, I made like $1,000, man. I was like hitting nonstop that weekend, man. The wife and I went on a nice little vacation with the kids. And everything, and college basketball, that's where I make most of my money wagering. NFL super hard, NBA and Major League Baseball are probably my second and third. And I love the NFL. It's the one I study the most. It hardly ever goes my way, though, enough.
It's hard. It's so hard to.
It's very hard.
It really is, because you don't know what the game plan is going to be. Anybody, you can have a dominant player that just disappears one night.
Yep. The parity is
you only
is
get 16, 17 games a year, so
yeah. Not only that, but like it's the sport that the books are focusing on the most.
That's right.
People like to wager on the NFL the most,
especially when it comes to the Chiefs. We'll just keep giving them
so true. I live in Des Moines. It's all Chiefs fans here, Chiefs and Vikings, and then Bears.
Yeah,
those are probably the order of fans in Des Moines, and after that, Packers fans. So those 4 teams are the ones that people root for here.
I can see that.
Yep. Iowa. Yep.
Thanks again, guys. Like I said, it was a great show tonight. Like I gave you all where you can follow us all at. And again, we're here every Friday night for you guys at 7 Central. So we'll be back next week. And until then, we appreciate you guys, and we love you. Bear down.
All right.
Go Bears.
The Willis Twin Towers podcast is a Barroom Network production. Jeff and Tim Willis are the co-hosts and co-producers. Aldo Gandia is executive producer. Music is licensed from Pond 5. Any copyrighted material used was done under the Fair Use Doctrine for commentary, criticism, and informative purposes. All of our programming is available in audio-only format by subscribing to the Barroom Network wherever you download podcasts. Videos are archived on YouTube.